Alrighty, welcome to my review of Valir, the Banished Isle. This is going to be the final video review I do before the start of field test week 1, and I wanted to pick a good set to do it for, and I certainly think I have a good set here. So let's just cut to the chase and get right into the cards. Starting off with our only non-artifact colorless card, Tesh, Fragmented Founder. For 4 generic mana, we get a 5 loyalty legendary planeswalker. It has -1, draw a card, surveil 2, and you gain 3 life. -2 to create 2 1/1 colorless spirit creature tokens. Do note they do not have flying. And -3, choose 2 target non-land permanents controlled by the same player. That player exiles one of them of their choice. It also has Pursuit for 5. For those who aren't aware, Pursuit is a mechanic that lets you cast a copy of a card from your graveyard for its Pursuit cost by exiling it and sacrificing any non-land permanent you control. Tesh is going to play a very similar role to Elspeth. I believe the name is Elspeth the Returned from Theros Beyond Death, where you will just minus Tesh a few times, let it die, and then recast it from the graveyard, and just do that over and over again. I think Tesh is actually going to be really solid at that role, because that -1, draw a card, surreal 2, gain 3 life, reads is very solid to me. I think the -2 and -3 are pretty good too, but the -1, in my opinion, is where it's at. It's got a lot of value there for a 4-cost Planeswalker in colorless. Now, unlike Elspeth, you can only cast Tesh once, because you do have to exile it to actually cast it from the graveyard. You're only getting a copy of Tesh, so that is a downside to keep aware of. Moving on to white, we start with Ascendant Judge. 1 a white and a white for a 2/3 creature bird warlock with flying, and whenever this creature attacks, create an Acolyte token. It's a 0/1 white and black warlock creature token with pay 1, sacrifice this token, surveil 1. Warlock tokens are introduced to this set as sort of cannon fodder. You can sacrifice whatever your needs. If you just need a death trigger, they have a sacrifice clause put into them. But if you want to do something like, I don't know, cast something with Pursuit, these Warlock tokens are going to do a great job. Ascendant Judge itself seems fine. 3 mana for a 2/3 with flying is, it's not the best rate for constructed, but it's passable. And attacking to create a token isn't bad. Unfortunately, I just think we have better options available to us in most formats, but it's worth keeping an eye on. Ascension Ritualist is 2 and a white for a 2/2 creature cat warlock with first strike, and whenever this creature attacks, you may sacrifice another creature you control. If you do, surveil 1 and put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Ascension Ritualist is a very solid little 3-drop for sacrifice strategies to sacrifice those those Acolyte tokens. You'll go ahead and still get that surveil 1, and you'll get to buff your entire board. Now this card, admittedly, is held back by the fact that it's not an enters trigger, it is an attack trigger. So without some way to grant it haste, it's going to be sitting very vulnerable on the board as a 3 mana 2/2. That is quite easy to kill. So we're going to have to consider if the slowness is still worth it, even on top of getting that Anthem every turn. Back Alley Entertainer is 3 and a white for a 2/3 creature human bard. When it enters, you choose 1, you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, or you create 2 1/1 white citizen creature tokens. Neither mode here is particularly inspiring for constructed, but the fact that you have them both as an option, I could see a world where if there's just nothing else in the entire format that's expensive and makes multiple tokens or provides an Anthem, maybe you run this. Blessed Procession is 2 and a white for a sorcery. You create 2 Acolyte tokens, then put a +1/+1 counter on each of them. Simple enough effect. 2 and a white for 2 1/2 bodies that have those sacrifice clauses built in. Not bad, but unfortunately these effects generally want to be 2 mana and be more of a raise the alarm type effect. The activated abilities could definitely be relevant here though. Call for Backup is 1 and a white for an instant. As an additional cost to cast a spell, choose a creature type from among creatures you control. Reveal cards from the top of your library, and to reveal a card of the chosen type, put it into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This is certainly an interesting card. Having to control a creature to have a 2 mana sort of cantrip / tutor is kind of interesting. I don't think you actually want this in your average typal deck because it is just 2 mana, draw any creature in your deck, which is a pretty bad rate. However, if you have cards that create tokens and aren't the creature type themselves, and you have a creature from your deck that you really want to grab, you can use the creature type of those tokens to go call for backup and get that creature that you want. So I could see a world where this sees play in that regard, and it is an instant, which is always nice. Chapel Crasher is a single white mana for a 1/1 creature, human rebel. It has muster. Whenever you cast a creature spell, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. If it's a rebel spell, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature instead. This is very similar to something like Champion of the Parish, but instead of checking for entry, it does check for cast, but it also works outside the creature type. So if you're running this in a deck with a lot of rebels, but then maybe a couple just really good cards that you want to run that aren't rebels, this is still going to get a buff, even if it's not a +1/+1 counter. I think this is definitely an extremely solid 1-drop that any rebel deck would want. Chapel Spectre is 3 and a white for a 3/3 creature spirit. Whenever it attacks, you exile up to 3 target cards from your graveyard, and you gain 1 life for each card exiled this way. I think, and it's flying. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but it does have flying. This is not a bad rate, honestly. Again, not an attack. It's an attack trigger, not an enter trigger, so that is a small mark against it. But exile 3, gain 3 is really not that bad. You know, that can really add up. If you have like an aggressive opponent who's relying on their graveyard, this kind of just puts a stop to all their shenanigans. City's Memory is a single white mana for an instant. You create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. You can also pay 1, a white, and a white to exile this card from your graveyard to create 2 more spirit tokens, and they can't block this turn. I actually think this card is pretty decent. The 1 mana mode is a little underrated, but the fact that it triggers all your created token synergies is going to be nice for a 1 mana instant. And that 3 mana exile from the graveyard mode is actually really nice. The fact that it just makes 2 more tokens for 3 mana is like a little below rate, but it's on the back of another card that's decent. The can't block this turn is also a bit of a downside, but not that bad. I mean, we wouldn't want it to be face up in the graveyard doing that. Clash of Courage is 1 and a white for an instant. You can choose one. Destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, or destroy target token. A little bit better than your average return to nature, because instead of targeting a card in the graveyard, you can instead blow up tokens. And I think in a lot of cases, that's going to be better. There are certainly some big tokens running around in every format, and the fact that this can snipe them is pretty nice. I don't know if it's good enough to run just on that alone, but the option certainly helps its playability over stuff like Return to Nature. Congregation Minister is 1 and a white for a 1/3 creature human warlock. When it enters, you create an Acolyte token. You know, normally these 2 mana 1/3s or 2/2s or whatever at common with set mechanic are usually not constructed playable, but this is 2 mana for 2 bodies. Like, that's pretty solid. 1/3 body is actually a really good rate in one of those. This is like a sorcery speed raise the alarm that gets a ton of extra stats. I'm very into it. Consult the Offerings is a single white mana for a sorcery. Exile target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard. Cast a copy of it without paying its mana cost. It enters tapped. This is very similar to a card from Canon called Helping Hand, except instead of returning from the graveyard to the battlefield, you instead have to exile and get a copy. There's, of course, upsides and downsides to this. The downside being that you can't reanimate the same creature card twice with this, but the upside being that you get cast triggers, which is very relevant. Fell the Non-Believer is 1 and a white for an instant. It has lifelink as long as you control a warlock, and it deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. Normally these 4 damage spells are not constructed playable, but lifelink changes that equation quite a bit, because that goes from killing 1 thing of your opponent in an aggro matchup to killing 1 thing and gaining a 4 life point swing, which is 20% of your starting life total. That is a lot for 1 spell to do. And again, all your Acolyte tokens are warlocks, so it is going to be quite easy to enable this. I think Fell the Non-Believer, in specifically a deck that cares about having Acolyte tokens or warlocks, is probably pretty solid. Speaking of warlocks, we have Forsaken Penitence, 1 and a white for a 1/2 creature human warlock. Whenever a token you control enters, create an Acolyte token. This ability triggers only once each turn. If you're running other cards that generate Acolyte tokens, you're absolutely putting this in. If you're just running a token deck in general, I think there's a decent argument to be had that this goes in there. Of course, you do want some sort of anthem so your Acolyte token can actually punch people, because it is normally a 0/1. But if you have ways to turn it into a threat, this can generate a lot of extra tokens that can just swing in for damage. And if you're running a sacrifice deck that has a lot of tokens, this is also a decent option because it's going to generate more sack fodder for you. The Great Singularity is 1 and a white for a legendary enchantment. Creatures you control have base power and a toughness 1/1, have vigilance, and are warlocks in addition to their other types. Whenever a creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. This ability triggers only once each turn. This is a very interesting card to evaluate. Obviously, it turns all your Acolyte tokens into 1/1s, which is better than a 0/1, and the vigilance is nice too. Similarly, any 0/0 creatures you control that enter with counters are going to be buffed by this. And the backside, or I shouldn't say the backside, the bottom ability, whenever a creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. That's just solid. Even if it's once per turn, that is just a good rate. You can go ahead and sacrifice your Acolyte tokens at instant speed to go ahead and just buff your board out of nowhere. And that's really good because you have the vigilance option too, so you can hold it up on your opponent's turn as well. So that's one +1/+1 counter for your turn and one for your opponent's turn, or 2 sets of counters per turn cycle. That's some pretty decent damage. Now, how is this just compared to a normal anthem that doesn't shrink your board? Well, in a lot of cases where you have creatures that are going to get shrunk, the +1/+1 counter will be making up that deficit. So you'll have to evaluate how often you're actually going to be having creatures die. Ivari, Liberated Mentor, is 3 and a white for a 4/4 legendary creature, Snake Rebel. If you casting a creature spell would cause a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. As an additional cost to cast creature spells, you may pay red. If you do, that spell can't be countered, and it gains haste. Normally, these Panharmonicons are not constructed playable, and I'm not sure this one is either, but there has a few things going for it that I think are solid. 1, 4 mana 4/4 stat line is pretty good. 2, this doesn't actually care about creature ETBs, this cares about cast triggers. So that's a completely different realm of Panharmonicon than we've seen before. That could seriously be a lot stronger depending on what's in the format. Muster, for example, works very well with this. And thirdly, that red payment ability is actually pretty solid. You can just go ahead and make all your creature spells uncounterable, which we've seen can be pretty potent, and granting them haste, meaning they're going to be swinging in for a lot. So if your opponent does not remove Ivari, they're going to get double triggers, and then even more triggers from the haste coming down. So I think Ivari could be solid. Midnight Warden is 4 a white for a 4/5 creature angel with flying. When it enters, you gain 4 life, and has basic land cycling for 1 and a white. Normally these land cyclers are like on the verge of playability, but they usually require a little more push from outside factors. But honestly, as a reanimation tool, this card's kind of just solid. Basic land cycling instead of plain cycling means you get a lot more options to go grab something out of your deck. And the 4 life can actually matter. That's 4 life plus 5 toughness to help bolster your life total. And of course, the flying is always nice. Offer the Faithless is 3 and a white for an instant. It has affinity for warlocks, and it exiles target creature or planeswalker. Pretty simple card. If you're running this, if you're running a warlock deck, you go ahead and run this without pretty much any questions asked, because it's going to be very cheap from all the Acolyte tokens you are making. One Quiet Moment is 4 and a white for a sorcery. Tap all creatures your opponents control, then put a stun counter on each of those creatures. Sleep is a very good limited card, and this is Sleep for white. It does cost 1 mana more, but the stun counters are even better than normal tap down, so we're pretty happy here. Run this in limited, do not run this in constructed. Outskirts Mentor is 2 and a white for a 3/2 creature, Snake Rebel. Whenever you cast a creature spell, target creature control gains your choice of first strike, vigilance, or lifelink until on a turn. This isn't bad. You know, being able to hand out first strike is probably one of the better things you can be doing in general to help creatures push through, and the lifelink and vigilance can both be helpful for bolstering your life total, either by gaining life directly or having something hold back as a blocker. So while this isn't exactly the craziest card, I mean 3 mana 3/2 is always going to be a tough sell, there are avenues where it could see play in a Rebels deck. Overseer's Chosen is 1 and a white for a 3/1 creature bird warlock. When it enters, you create an Acolyte token. You can pay 1 and sacrifice another creature to give this creature indestructible until on a turn and tap it, but only once each turn. This is another Raise the Alarm that I feel is pretty nice. Again, not an actual Raise the Alarm because one of the tokens is a 0/1, but it does bring its own fodder for a one-time indestructible swing or defense. That's pretty solid. We've seen cards like this before seen play in Adanto Vanguard. Now, Adanto Vanguard's cost was easier to pay, but again, it didn't come with its own fodder. That's nice. Overseer's Entrancer, is 1 and a white for a 2/2 creature cat warlock. It has vigilance, and you can pay a single white mana to tap it and tap target creature you don't control. You may tap an untapped creature token you control rather than paying white to activate this ability. This card I really want to like, but unfortunately I don't think it quite works out for this theoretical warlock deck. It is a 2-mana 2/2, and it is a warlock, and it has vigilance, and those are all good upsides, but the tap ability would struggle to see play in Constructed even if it was already free. But the fact that it's not free, it costs 1 mana and sometimes costs no mana at the cost of tapping a token, I don't quite see it. Now, you can still sacrifice the token you tapped at any time, which is always nice for your synergies, but I think this one's going to struggle to get there. Overseer's Shackle is 1 and a white for an enchantment aura. It has enchant creature, and enchanted creature can't attack or block. And you can pay 3 and a white to have enchanted creature's controller sacrifice it, and you gain 1 life and surveil 1. This is just a solid pacifism for limited. For constructed, there are much better options. Preacher of Singularity is 3 and a white for a 2/3 creature bird warlock. It has flying and lifelink, and you can pay 4 and a white to give creatures control +1/+1 until end of turn. Similarly to the last card, very solid and limited, completely ignorable in constructed. Reclaimed Convert is 1 and a white for a 2/1 creature cat rebel. It has vigilance, and whenever you cast a creature spell, this creature gains first strike until end of turn, and that is muster ability. Unfortunately, similar to the last card, this is pretty much a limited card. 2 mana 2/1 of vigilance and first strike would be somewhat interesting for constructed, but this isn't always that. This is a little worse, so unfortunately, we're going to have to pass. Renegade Banneret is 3 and a white for a 3/2 creature cat rebel. When it enters, you may return target creature card with power 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. Unfortunately, this does go to hand. If it went to battlefield, there would be a chance for it in constructed, but as is, no dice. Renegade Recruiter is 1 and a white for a 2/2 creature human rebel. It has vigilance and muster. Whenever you cast a creature spell, tap target creature you don't control. At the beginning of your end step, you may return another creature you control to its owner's hand. That is what I'm talking about. That is a very solid rebel. 2 mana 2/2 with vigilance is a solid stat line. Being able to repeatedly tap your opponent's stuff down is good, and just being able to rebuy powerful ETBs on the end step is very nice. This card does a lot of different things, and it does it pretty well. Jack of all trades, and I'm quite a fan. Renegade Trueheart is 1 and a white for a 1/2 creature bird rebel. It has flash and flying, and when it enters, return up to one other target creature you control to its owner's hand. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. This type effect has seen play before, and the fact that it's come down as a 2 mana 2/3 that saves another creature from removal is a brutal series of events for your opponents, because you just stifled their removal spell and drew a card in quotation marks. So yeah, Renegade Trueheart is probably one of the best cards we've seen so far. It's just very solid. Renegade's Intercession is a single white mana for an instant. Choose one or both, put a +1/+1 counter target creature, and or return target creature you own to its owner's hand. This effect certainly isn't bad. The +1/+1 counter can shift combat, and being able to rescue a creature, as we've mentioned, is nice. But I think this is a little worse than the last option. This is a lot worse than the last option because it doesn't come with a 2/3 flyer. So I think Renegade's Intercession is probably just not going to be as good. Sanctum Enforcer is 2 and a white for a 3/3 creature human warlock. It has vigilance, and whenever another creature control dies, you gain 1 life. Unfortunately, a few too much mana for too little of an effect. Semari Weaponsmith is 3 and a white for a 3/2 creature human artificer. It has first strike during your turn, and whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you create a weapon token. You may attach it to another creature control. For those not aware, a weapon token is an equipment artifact with equip 2. An equipped creature gets +1/+1. Unfortunately, 4 mana is just way too much for this effect. The 3/2 stat line, even with first strike, is not quite appealing, and the fact that you can make the weapon token is nice, but you can only attach it to other creatures you control, so it's just not quite going to get there. Seern Eternal Sentinel is the first of our Flipwalkers. It starts on the front side as a creature, a legendary creature, Angel Warlock. It's 2 and a white for a 3/3 with flying. You can pay black and sacrifice another creature to surveil one and put a loyalty counter on Siern. Then you may transform her, activate only as a sorcery. Yes, you can activate that multiple times in a turn, by the way. On the back side, we have Siern, Covetous Creation. It is a legendary planeswalker. It has sacrifice a creature, surveil one, put a loyalty counter on Siern, activate only as a sorcery. Again, not bounded. You can do that as many times as you like during your turn. The 0-mana ability is to create 2 Acolyte tokens. The -2 is to return another target non-angel, non-spirit creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And the -X is to exile target non-permanent mana value X. I think this card is gas. This card is incredible. Just moving back to the front, this is a 3-mana 3/3 flying that has the ability to just dig through your deck with Surveil by sacrificing a few flimsy tokens you have around. The activate is a sorcery, does hurt it, but it honestly is one of the only things that makes this card balance for the cost. This is a incredible beater to start. A 3-mana 3/3 flyer. Again, pretty good. Swing an end for in the air, 3 damage is a decent clock. And you're just putting loyalty counters on her just to have her ready. And then at any time you can flip her. Again, you can just do this after sacrificing 1 creature. To just flip her, make 2 more Acolyte tokens, and now you have 3 loyalty, and next turn you're ready to turn a big guy back to your back from your graveyard to the battlefield. Like, that is just an extremely solid playstyle. So my overall grade for Siern, a very, very good card. Solemn Procession is X, a white and white for a sorcery. You may choose a creature type, then return each creature card of the chosen type with mana value X less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Exile Solemn Procession. Solemn Procession is a pretty solid reanimator tool here. It's just going to go ahead and return all of your creature cards in your typal deck that happens to be white from your graveyard to the battlefield again. It is just going... Like, if you're running a deck that cares about the graveyard and is a typal deck, it should just be a natural fit. It does exile itself for safety, so there's not going to be any looping with like Archaeomancer effects, unfortunately, but that's probably for the best. Spite of the Founder is 2, a white and white for an enchantment. It has Ward 2, and when it enters, if it was cast, phase out all creatures until this enchantment leaves the battlefield. Permanents that phase in this way phase in tapped. Now this is a 4-mana board wipe. Holy moly. The fact that it just comes with Ward 2 is such an extra like oomph of power, because normally when you play these cards, you know, you just cast them and then your opponent just immediately hits them with a Return to Nature or Banishing Light or whatever, and you're very sad because they get all their stuff back. But this card has so many things going forward over those. Again, Ward 2, very solid. Phasing back and tapped, so they can't even attack immediately with the creatures they get back. Spite of the Founder is a very solid board wipe. And again, it's an enchantment. That opens up so many more synergies than sorceries for your average control deck. Stand as 1 is 1 and a white for an instant. Rebels you control get +2/+1 until end of turn, and other creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. This is a limited card that could potentially be a constructed card if you run enough Rebels, and I don't know, if you're running like 3 to 4 to 5 on the battlefield on average, I could see a world where this hits very hard. There was a card from Ravnica Allegiance that was 1 and a white that gave all your creatures with flying +2/+2 until end of turn and untapped them. And that card was pretty decent in like a janky Flyers deck that was around. That was one of the best cards in it. So I could see a world where this does the same for a Rebels deck. Stand Ready is 2, a white and a white for an instant. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature control. They gain indestructible until end of turn. Untap them. As much as I want to love this card, 4 mana is just so much for an aggro deck to hold up, or a mid-range deck to hold up even. The board wipes coming out on usually, or sometimes turn 4 before you're even able to hold this up, which I really feel is just the death knell for this card's playability. Sunset Sentries is 2 and a white for a 2/2 creature. Sorry, wait, one more thing. Didn't you mention it also just gets destroyed by Spite of the Founder? Indestructible does not even work on phase a little bit. Phase completely shuts it down. So yeah, unfortunately, Stand Ready is just not going to get there. There you go. Sunset Sentries is 2 and a white for a creature human rebel. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each spell you've cast this turn. When it enters, draw a card. If you're running just this in like a card and it's consistently your second spell, I think you're very happy with this. If you're paying 1 mana for it, you are extremely happy with this. And again, the base case isn't even that bad. 3 mana, 2/2 draw a card is not constructed playable, but it is occasionally something that you'll be fine with doing, just as like cycle it out of your hand to get to the next thing. This is a very solid second spell payoff. Volwood Warder is a single white mana for a 1/2 creature Treefolk Rebel. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you gain 1 life. This is the second time this ability is resolved this turn. Draw a card. If this is the third time this ability is resolved this turn, put 2 +1/+1 encounters on this creature. Speaking of cards that are good in second spell, this card's incredible. You really want solid 1-cost cards you can play in a second spell deck to make sure you can consistently second spell with any available mana you have, and this is a really good option. Let's just say you're not playing this on turn 1, or if you do, you absolutely can, but let's say in this hypothetical scenario, it's turn 3. You play this first, you follow up with Sunset Sentries. You've now drawn 2 cards, and you have a 1/2 and a 2/2 on board. But let's say it's turn 4. You play this, you play a Sunset Sentries, and you play another Sunset Sentries. And now you have a 3/4, you've drawn 3 cards, and you have another 2/2/2s. And you've gained, what, like 3 life or something? Like, this is just such a solid 1-drop. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break to rest my voice. I'm going to be doing this between each of the colors. Something new I'm trying out to see if it helps. Because I've been feeling a little fatigued, to be honest, at the end of each of these. So we're going to see if that helps by taking a little break between them. Alrighty, I will be right back. And we're back for blue. Starting off with Aspiring Shaper, 2 and a blue for a 2/3 creature, Cat Druid. You can pay 1 and tap to draw a card, then discard a card, and you can pay 7 and tap to draw 2 cards. Now, I love me an Invoker just as much as the rest of them, but historically, they are not constructed playable. But I do love this design. Attuned Rebuttal is 1 and a blue for an instant. Choose target spell. If you're ancient, or that spell is a creature spell, counter it unless its controller pays 3. You're ancient as long as you have 8 or more total land cards in play or in your graveyard. Ancient is a returning mechanic from, I believe, Blood-like Rivers that is showing up in this set. This is sort of going to be like a mana leak, kind of. It's always a mana leak against creature spells, and then against non-creature spells, it's a mana leak if you're ancient. This is a very difficult card to evaluate, because Essence Scatter is pretty decent, though it tends to be a lot less playable than Negate. And this is potentially a mana leak that can hit anything, but it's not quite, because being ancient is not exactly easy to get. I mean, it's not hard, but you're not going to be doing it on your first or second turn, where this is going to be first coming online, right? So it's a hard card to evaluate for sure. And my instinct is that it's not going to be playable, but I think it's definitely worth testing. Beneath the Tide is 3 and a blue for an instant. You can tap, there's no tapping. Target creature's owner puts on the choice of the top or bottom of their library, and has basic land cycling for 1 and a blue. So we've seen these kind of 4 mana, put something on top or bottom, be completely unplayable before, but adding basic land cycling to it makes it a real consideration. I think this is actually a card that could see play if you're like a very greedy deck that runs a lot of basics and wants removal. This is removal that helps you find those basics. Like, that's not bad. Chandelier Slink is 2 a blue and a blue for a 2/2 creature Cat Rogue. It has Spectacle for 1 a blue and a blue that says you may cast a spell for its Spectacle cost rather than its mana cost if an opponent lost life this turn. It can't be blocked, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. This is decent, you know? If you're not playing this as a 3 mana 2/2, it's bad. I'll just be straight up, it's garbage. 4 mana is just really bad. But if you can play for 3 mana extremely consistently, I think there's a spot for it in Constructed where it could potentially be okay. Covet is 2 and a blue for a sorcery with Spectacle for 1 and a blue that just says draw 2 cards. This is going to be very similar to the last one, where if you can make your opponent consistently lose life on turn 2, this card is really freaking good, like really good. And if you can't make him consistent, this card is pretty shit. So it's a bit strong, but you definitely want this to be turned on for Spectacle. And if it is, which I think you can probably do pretty consistently, Covet will be very solid. Duplicity is 4, a blue and a blue for a sorcery. It can't be countered, and you choose a creature type, and then for each creature control of the chosen type, create a token that's a copy of it. This is a commander plant card. These cards very rarely see playing constructed. I could see a world where maybe if you have like a typal deck that's dedicated to cheating out big spells, like I don't know, like a wizard's deck or a giant's deck have been known to do something similar before. I could see a world where this sees play, but I think from the archetypes in this set, it's not likely. Eavesdrop is, I believe, a reprint from a set for a single blue mana. It's an instant, and it says Surveil 1, then draw a card. It's just Consider from canon, but functionally reprinted. And yeah, Consider is a great card. This is a great card. It's going to see play. Enigmatic Apothecary is 1 in a blue for a 1/3 creature snake druid. When it enters, you mill 2 cards, and as long as you're ancient, it gets +3/+1. 2 mana 4/4, pretty good stats. ETB mill 2 cards, not great, but you know, it gets you there. Unfortunately, I just don't think this is quite enough. It turns on a little bit too late to be of relevance, I think. Evasive Flourish is X in a blue for an instant. Up to X target creatures you control each get +1/+1 and gain flying until on a turn. I consider this pretty much a limited card to help you win a limited game by flying over your opponent's board. In Constructed, I don't think this is going to be worth its inclusion cost. Expert Infiltration is a single blue mana for an enchantment aura. It has an enchant creature. Whenever enchanted creature deals combat damage to a player, you surveil 1, then draw a card. And whenever enchanted creature becomes blocked, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. This is a really solid curiosity effect. Just drawing whenever you hit a player with a 1 mana, with any creature that this is enchanted to for 1 mana, and you get to even surveil 1 first too, so you get a little bit of like selection, and the fact that the creature grows when it's blocked, so like it limits the number of things that can actually block it profitably. This is just a pretty good curiosity variant, and I would be surprised if it didn't see much play. Heist Lookout is 2 in a blue for a 3/2 creature cat rogue. When it enters, you tap target creature you don't control and put a stun counter on it. This is a limited card. Innovative Alchemist is 2 in a blue for a 2/4 creature human druid. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you surveil 1. Then once each turn, if you're ancient, you may copy that spell and choose new targets for the copy. Now this is a really, really good payoff for ancient. If you become ancient, this is a 3 mana spell doubler that also fills your graveyard a little bit and has utility from before it actually can spell double. And it's a 2/4. That's such a good stat line for dodging a bunch of different type of 3 toughness threshold removal spells. Innovative Alchemist is a card I'm eyeing as one of the best ancient payoffs in the set. Intangibility is 1 in the blue for an enchantment aura. It has enchant creature. Enchant creature loses all abilities and is a spirit creature with base power and toughness 1/1, in addition to its other types, and it can't block or be blocked. Honestly, I think this is probably not great, even in limited. Obviously, losing all abilities and being a 1/1 is nice, but the fact that it can still chip in for damage is probably pretty decent, especially if it has like counters on it. Like that could potentially get very scary for you. So while I don't think it's bad, I do think you do have to be a little wary when you're playing this. And for Constructed, it's pretty much a non-starter. Into the Grove is 4 in blue and blue for sorcery. Choose up to 2 target non-land permanents opponent owns. They return 1 to their hand and put the other on the top or bottom of their library. This is pretty much a limited card. These cards never really see playing Constructed. Jump the Gap is 1 in blue for an instant. Exile target creature you own. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. 2 mana flickers tend to be not the best when they can only target creatures, but getting that cast trigger can be important. We have Muster in this set, which, while it isn't really a blue mechanic, this could be a good reason to go into it. And there's just other good cast triggers in the world that care about like you casting a creature. So yeah, I could see a world where it's okay. Juniper's Awakening is 3 a blue and a blue for an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, you create an XX green elemental creature token, where X is the greatest amount of mana you spent to cast a non-creature spell this turn. Sort of a weird Shark Typhoon type thing, where instead of just caring about each non-creature spell you cast, you get 1 XX for the biggest non-creature spell you cast this turn. And it specifically cares about the amount of mana you spent. And again, it does count itself, which is something that Shark Typhoon cannot do. So this is sort of a 5 mana 5/5 that comes with like bonuses later. So like It's decent. It's hard to evaluate these expensive enchantments that don't really do a ton. I mean, this does make a 5/5, yes, but you need a little bit more than that to be constructed playable, and this does do more. But again, very, very difficult card to evaluate for constructed. I think it has potential. I mean, obviously Shark Typhoon was really good. This does not have the cycling mode that Shark Typhoon had. That was the thing that made it playable, but it's worth keeping in mind that this could potentially be a good card just for the fact it's a 5 mana 5/5 that gives you an additional good card. Like, that's not bad. Oof, okay, we're gonna try. Leowin, Escape Artist. 1 in the blue for a 1/3 with Skulk, which, as a reminder, it can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. Oh, no, reminder, this is a cat rogue, legendary cat rogue. Whenever Leowin deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, then discard a card. Put a loyalty counter on her. Then you may pay red. If you do, transform her. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. There you go. Leowin, Ghost of Vicuro, is a legendary planeswalker. All creatures you control have Skulk. The +1 until end of turn, up to one target creature gets +1/+0, and up to one other target creature gets a -1/-0. Another +1, that is to draw a card, then discard a card, and a -2 to exile any number of cards from your graveyard. When you do, Leowin deals that much damage to any non-player target. So Leowin is pretty okay. I struggle to say she's great. 2 mana, one in the blue for a 1/3 looter in quotation marks is about the going rate for constructed. We've seen Rona be a pretty good card, and though she did have other relevant text, she did have like just the baseline of being a 2 mana 1/3 that flipped and looted, and this is a 2 mana 1/3 that flips and loots. The Skulk not always being online against 1 power like creatures is not great, but you can use that +1 to shrink your own guy and grow your opponent's guy if you need to swing in under them, or just grow up your own guy if you can swing it, and go ahead and hit. The fact that it still loots is very nice. If you can go ahead and loot with this and then pay red and loot again, you're pretty happy. And that -2 is pretty solid as well. I think as a package, Leowin is definitely a lot worse than the white Flipwalker, but she's not a bad card. I could see a world where she's pretty okay. Loresk Ever Curious is 3 a blue and a blue for a 3/5 legendary creature, Tree Folk Druid. It has Vigilance. It has Landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, draw a card. And you can pay 2 and a green to return a target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped, but only as a sorcery. I think this is a pretty solid draw engine. I mean, honestly, like, I don't know about constructed because Tatyova was never really a constructed card, but this has a few upsides over Tatyova. The 5 toughness is a lot better than Tatyova's 3 toughness, and that 2 mana green ability is super nice for being able to cycle your fetch lands from your graveyard over and over again, turning this into a very potent draw engine, provided you can pump the mana into it, which, your fetch lands are helping you get that mana. And for Commander, this card is going to be a house. I don't know if this set is intended for any Commander format, but if it is intended for Revolution, which I believe it is, it will be pretty solid in Brawl. Observe the Pattern is 2 and a blue for an enchantment. When it enters, you surveil 2, and as long as you're ancient, creatures you don't control get -1/-0. This effect usually doesn't see play in constructed, but in limited it attempts to be okay. So, yeah, cool. On Top of the World is 3 a blue and a blue for a sorcery. You choose a creature, then you return all creatures not chosen this way to their owner's hand. Pretty solid board wipe. Returning to hand is probably one of the weaker things you can do, because your opponent can't just, again, replay all their creatures. But the fact that you get to rebuild first, in quotation marks, by getting to choose the one creature that stays is pretty nice. Now, this does have an extremely major downside, where if you don't control any creatures and your opponent does have creatures, they get to keep one of their creatures, which is really bad. That is not where you want to be for 5 mana. So, ultimately, I don't think this card quite gets there. Not for that reason, but just for, like, these blue wipes usually not being too solid. Perfect Plan is 3 and a blue for sorcery. It has Spectacle for 1 and a blue. Target non-land permanent's owner puts it into their library, second from the top or on the bottom. This is just pretty solid, If you're looking for removal in your Spectacle deck, 2 mana, just get rid of something for a few turns or for forever, not bad. Again, 4 mana, you really don't want to be casting this for 4 mana. Pickpocket is 1 a blue and a blue for an instant. Counter target spell. That spell's controller reveals their hand and the top card of their library. A little bit of information grabbing off your counterspell. 3 mana counterspells probably need a little more juice for constructed to be playable. Planar Archives is 1 in a blue for an artifact. You can pay 2 and tap to exile a card from your graveyard and draw a card. And you can pay 5 and tap to exile this artifact and take an extra turn after this one. Activate only as a sorcery and only if there are 5 or more cards exiled with this artifact. This card is gas. Just exiling a card from your graveyard is a really easy cost to pay. Like almost any constructed deck can do it, even just with fetches. You can have this online pretty easily. And obviously you're in blue, so you're already more inclined to having cards in your graveyard compared to something like, I don't know, white. And just being able to draw a card is nice. Like we've had a few. I reviewed a few of these already. It's funny that this specific 2 mana tap, pay 2, draw a card has shown up so much. But Mazemind Tome is just a good card. Like I've said it before, and I'll probably say it again. Mazemind Tome is just solid, and this is a Mazemind Tome for sure. And that extra turn mode is so nice to have. This is not an extra turn as a sorcery, by the way. You can do this on your opponent's end step. Hold up mana and interact with them. And if they don't, you have 2 turns coming up. That is so sweet. Again, there is a bit of... Oh, no, I'm blind. I absolutely cannot do that. Please ignore that part I just said. It says activate only as a sorcery right there. I'm so used to seeing it at the end of the sentence and not at the beginning. Oops. My bad. You cannot do that, but it's still good. 5 mana take an extra turn is the going rate. You do have the exile cards to do it, but you don't really care because the 2 mana to tap draw card is already pretty worth it. So yeah, Planar Archives, really good card. And cannot be activated on your opponent's end step. Restoration Specialist is 2 a blue and a blue for a 3/4 creature human druid. It has vigilance, and if you would draw a card, you may instead mill 3 cards, then return a non-creature card from your graveyard to your hand. If a non-land card would be put into your graveyard from anywhere other than your library, exile it instead. This is just pretty solid. It's kind of a weird lich effect where you can get back your like non-creature cards, right? So lands, anything except a creature. Lands, artifacts, instants, sorceries, enchantments, planeswalkers. This grabs them all. And it digs quite well too. Like obviously it doesn't do anything on entry unless you have like a looter, draw cards whenever another creature enters or something like that. But like you're not too upset about that because it's just a 4 mana 3/4 vigilance. Like that's not a bad stat line. Again, that survives a lot of 3 toughness stuff. And the exile mode is really not that punishing. Like it preserves your lands first of all. So if you're just using this as like a weird Crucible of Worlds effect, you can do that. That's very solid for ancient decks, but also just in general. Like that's nice. You can just cycle your fetch lands with this over and over again if you want. And it does just buy back all your counter spells. You can buy back an opt, hold it up on your opponent, and they know they have to play around the counterspell in your graveyard because you can opt and bring back that counterspell and counter their thing face up from the graveyard. That is pretty solid. Rooftop Observer is 3 and a blue for a 3/4 creature cat rogue. It has Spectacle for 1 a blue and a blue. You may look at the top card of your library at any time, and during your turn, you may play cards from the top of your library as long as the opponent lost life this turn. I adore this design. This is probably my favorite design we've seen so far. It's a future sight that plays into Spectacle. If you can play it for 3 mana, it's obviously really good, but even for 4 mana, you're not that upset about it. 3/4 is, again, pretty decent stat line, and just asking you to have your opponent lose life is really not that much of a hoop. You are a rogues deck. I assume you can hit them because you will be running a lot of ways to make sure you have Spectacle online turn 2, much less turn 3 or turn 4. So yeah, Rooftop Observer, extremely solid card. Rooftop Runner is 1 and a blue for a 1/2 creature bird rogue. It enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. If an opponent lost life this turn, it has flying. Of the 2 mana 2/3 birds with flying in this set that only have that 2/3 stat line because of a +1/+1 counter, I think this one is decidedly the worst of the pair. But it's not bad. 2 mana 2/3 flyer isn't like you're not running that just for that, but the fact that it's a rogue could be relevant. So it's getting a solid maybe from me. Samari Pilferer is a single blue mana for a 1/1 creature bird rogue. It has flash and flying, and when it enters, you may tap up to one target non-land permanent. Sorry, it's not a may. You have to tap up to one target non-land permanent. Up to one, saving you there. Yeah, I mean, if you're a rogues deck, this is your 1 mana flyer that can go ahead and enable Spectacle turn 2. The flash really helps. And you can even tap down like a flying blocker your opponent has, or any blocker, really. So, yeah, this goes straight into your rogue deck, right into your ninjutsu deck. It's a 1 mana 1/1 flash flyer. That is basically the bar. And having that ETB is pretty nice for the endgame. Citral Sentry is 4 and a blue for a 3/4 creature bird druid. Has flying, and when it enters, you may put up to one target non-creature non-land card from your graveyard on top of your library. If this returned to hand, I would think it might have some constructed applications, but on top of library is going to be a pass for constructed. Citral Shore Sculptor is 2 and a blue for a 3/2 creature human druid. At the beginning of your main phase, you surveil 1, and you can pay 1 in the blue and exile 2 cards from your graveyard to plus a +1/+1 counter on target druid you control, but only as a sorcery. I think this is honestly decent. For limited, I think this is actually a really solid grindy card because you can go ahead and just ditch all those cards from your graveyard to pump up all your creatures. Paying 2 and exiling 2 cards is not something that's very difficult in the end game of a limited game, and that Surveil 1 helps you fuel it too. For constructed, I think it's probably just a little bit slow. Shaper's Rites is a single mana for an instant. Target creature you control gets +0/+2 and gains hexproof until on a turn. If it's a druid, put a +1/+1 counter on it. You know, these 1 mana blue hexproof spells and the green ones as well, they tend to see play. They're okay. So the fact that this is just gets a bonus if you're running a druid deck, it's nice. If you're running a druid deck, I think it's worth considering. Outside of that, there's probably better hexproof tricks. Subtle Touch is 1 in the blue for an instant. Choose 1. If you control a rogue, you may choose both instead. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Return target non-creature non-land permanent to its owner's hand. I think if you're not a rogue deck, you basically never run this card. But if you are a rogue deck, I think this is pretty decent. 2 mana, return 2 things an opponent controls to their hand can be pretty devastating. If they have like a Banishing Light sitting around along with their creatures, this is just so brutal. So I could see a world where you play it. It's not bad. Survivalist Mentor is 3 and a blue for a 2/3 creature human druid. It has vigilance, and whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you create a 2/2 blue and green druid creature token. Unfortunately, this is just a little too expensive for constructed. For limited, it's pretty solid. Swift Step Robber is 1 in a blue for a 2/1 creature human rogue. It has flash and flying. It can't block, and when it enters, up to one target creature becomes a copy of it. Very cute design. You can go ahead and use this on one of your creatures to buff it up from like a 1/1 or even like a 0/1 if you happen to be playing those with warlocks for some reason. And you can also use it to just shrink your opponent's thing, make it that it can't block, and loses all abilities. Like, Swift Step Robber is really solid, and I think it's a card that mono blue tempo and also rogues are just going to be extremely into as like a powerful tool for dealing with your opponent. Tireless Refutation is 2 a blue and a blue for an instant. It has choose 1, counter target spell, or draw 3 cards, then discard a card. I think this is actually a really good rate. There's a card in Bloomburrow, I believe it's called Spellgyre, that has a very similar effect, and I think I actually prefer the effect here. I believe the one from Bloomburrow looks at your top 4 and then puts 2 into hand and 2 into the graveyard, along with countering a spell. And I think drawing in 3 and then discarding is actually a better rate. So yeah, Tireless Refutation, very into it. Undergrowth Steward is 1 in the blue for a 1/3 creature treefolk druid. As long as you're ancient, instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and it taps to mill 2 cards. I could see a world where you play it. Tapping to mill 2 cards is not great on a 2-mana creature, but the instant sorcery reduction is pretty nice. Ultimately, I think it doesn't quite get there, but I could see a world where if the perfect deck conditions align, you want this. Vicuro Informant is a 1 mana 1/2 creature human rogue with ward 1 that can't be blocked as long as you control another rogue. I think this card is probably going to just be a bit inconsistent for your rogue deck. If you do not have a follow-up on rogue turn 2, or your opponent casts a removal spell on that rogue, which will not have ward 1 like the Informant, you are going to be really sad about this. So I don't quite think you want this. You would rather have the flyer. And for our final blue common, we have Vikiro Pathmaker. 3 and a blue for a 2/3 creature, human rogue. It has Spectacle for 1 and a blue, and when it enters, you return up to 1 target creature to its owner's hand. Again, this is another decent Spectacle card. If you can have Spectacle always online, turn 2, I think this is decent as like a 2-mana 2/3 that just destroys your opponent on tempo. Like if your opponent tries to contest you with a 1-drop, this card is going to make them very sad. But yeah, that is the end of blue. We'll be moving on to black in a moment. I'll be right back. And we're back for black. Become the Hunted is 1 and a black for a sorcery that says return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and has Pursuit for 1, a black and a black. This is really good. 2 mana, reanimate a thing that costs 3 or less has typically been able to see some play in stuff like Revolution, and the fact that this has pseudo flashback is pretty damn solid. I think this is very, very decent. Bedlam's Vessel is a single black mana for a 1/1 creature Azra Mercenary. When it enters, if it enters from your graveyard or you cast it from your graveyard, exile it. If you do, create a 5/5 red skeleton dragon creature token with flying. And it has Pursuit for 3, a black and a black. So, your 1-mana 1/1, if you manage to get it back in an unconventional way, is a 5/5. That's like Archfiend's Vessel. However, if you can't manage to get it back, the Pursuit will bail you out by just being a 5-mana 5/5 that requires you to sack an online permanent. It's not bad. These card basically entirely depends on the level of reanimation available, but if it's good enough, I could see it being very solid. Beyond the Shroud is a single black mana for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may sacrifice a creature. Exile target creature or planeswalker if it has mana value 2 or less, or if the spell's additional cost was paid. This is the type of card that does occasionally see play. Blood Chief's Thirst was a pretty decent card back in Zendikar Rising, and this is similar. Instead of having a 4-mana mode that lets you kill a creature, this has a 1-mana mode that lets you kill a creature if you also give up a creature. And it can hit planeswalkers too, I should mention. It can hit planeswalkers. Yeah, I think this is just pretty good again. If you're interested in a black exile removal spell that hits cheap stuff always and can hit bigger stuff if you have sack fodder, Beyond the Shroud is pretty much going to be the best option in slot. Bloodletting is 1, a black and a black for a sorcery. Creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. Whenever a creature you control dies this turn, each opponent loses 1 life. This is sort of a weird bloodletting effect. Bloodletting. No, that's not it. Sort of weird blood artist effect. The card is a bloodletting effect because its name is bloodletting. So it's a pseudo board wipe that also burns your opponent for each creature you control that dies this way. So you can go ahead and use this to clear all your Acolyte tokens and burn your opponent for a lot. But you can also just use it as a board wipe. That's pretty good. I really like the modality here. Normally this is just a sideboard card, but I think if you are an Aristocrats deck, you consider this for your sideboard. Coffer's Altar is 2 and a black for an artifact. You can pay tap and sacrifice a creature to choose one. If you sacrifice a creature with mana value 2 or greater to activate this ability, you may choose both instead. Activate only as a sorcery. You can create a treasure token or draw a card. These 3 mana tap to do somethings are generally like considered, right? But this one has a few things going against it. Activating only as a sorcery is kind of painful here. Creating a treasure token or drawing a card for sacking something is probably not quite the rate you want to be at for 3 mana. And if you can do both, that's nice. But how often are you going to have a mana value 2 or greater creature that you can repeatedly sacrifice to this each turn and be happy, right? Like, don't get me wrong, there are 2 mana recursive creatures that are probably really great with this. But how much of that is that the 2 mana creature is great and not Coffer's Altar? I don't think it's a bad card, but I think I'll have to see it more in action to actually decide if it's like good. Crypt Caretaker is 3 and a black for a 2/3 creature bird warlock. When it enters, you create an Acolyte token, and whenever another creature control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. A bit too expensive for constructed. Crypt Tiller is 1 and a black for a creature rat warlock. When it enters, you may have each player discard a card. Then if you discarded a non-land card this way, create an Acolyte token. This is not bad. We've seen cards like, I believe it's called Accursed Mummy, Be a 2-mana 2/2 that has each player discard a card. That's a decent rate. And the fact that it's going to make an Acolyte token, it's yet another kind of sort of raise the alarm with your Acolyte tokens. I do think this one's probably not quite as enticing as the others, though. Disciple of Sorolla is 2 and a black for a 2/3 creature, Snake Warlock. When it enters, you create an Acolyte token, and you can pay black and sacrifice another creature to give this creature +2/+0 until end of turn. Even just 1 mana is a little too much for this activated ability to be decent and constructed. Done Deal is 1 and a black for an instant. Additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a non-land permanent. You draw 2 cards, gain 2 life, and create a weapon token. Now this card is quite interesting. Obviously, it's no... I forget the name of construction, but the one that makes a treasure token. It's obviously not that card. But being able to hit any non-land permanent instead of creatures or artifacts is really nice. You can sacrifice your enchantments, I guess your planeswalkers if you want. That is an option. But the gain 2 is a pretty nice upside here, as is the weapon token. And again, this weapon token can be sacrificed to another copy of Done Deal. So yeah, I think Done Deal is probably going to be a pretty solid Minesweep effect. Elite Aspirant is 1 in the black for a 2/2 creature cat mercenary. When it dies, you create a treasure token. You generally want these effects to be 1 mana to be playable. Forsaken Shroud Guard is 2 in a black for a 2/2 creature bird warlock. It has flying. Whenever another warlock you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. You can tap it, sacrifice another creature, and surveil 1. No payment. 3 mana is just kind of expensive for a Blood Artist, especially one that only works with warlocks. Flying is nice, but 3 mana 2/2 flying is kind of like the bar. And that sack ability is being a tap ability is just... yeah, unfortunately, I think the whole package just doesn't quite get there. The Founder's Hunt Begins is 3 black and a black for a sorcery. You may choose one. Search your library for a card, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. Or put a card you own from outside the game into your hand. It has Pursuit for 1 black and a black and pay 3 life. Now that is very enticing. I think the 5 mana mode is probably not the greatest. If you compare this to Mastermind's Acquisition, was kind of just playing janky decks. The 4 mana mode, or the 4 mana that card costed, was a lot even in those decks. So you really only ran it because you had to. I think the 5 mana is going to be a rough sell. But the fact that the 3 mana mode is there, now that could potentially be very interesting. Especially since it casts from the yard. Like, that is just so nice. Like, if you just mill it over, you're very happy with that, right? You do have to pay 3 life and sacrifice something, but if you're in the type of deck that really wants this, like, go grab a combo piece or something, you can find fodder to use on this. You will find a way. Go for the Gut is X and a black for sorcery. Sorcery. You mill X cards, then up to 1 target creature card, up to 1 target creature, it's -1/-1 for each card in your graveyard until end of turn. Huh. I think this is actually really freaking good. It can only hit creatures, but if you just have like 2 or 3 cards in your graveyard, this is pretty decent. And again, you don't even need to pay anything in text. You can just have this for a single black mana. It is a sorcery, which is a small mark against it, but like even with a fetch, this starts killing like Llanowar elves and Husk Forgers and stuff, which is really nice. And in the late game, if you have like 10 or 12 cards in your graveyard, this is just a kill spell for 1 mana. And again, it can just fuel itself. If you're like in a desperate situation and you need more cards to feed to it, go ahead and just pay mana into the X and this still kills stuff. Dude, go for the Gut. Great card. I really like the design. Hand of the Overseer is 2 black and a black for a 3/4 creature, Azra Warlock. If you would mill or surveil a number of cards, you may mill or surveil that many cards +1 instead. Whatever attacks, surveil 1. Probably a little too expensive for like a mill or surveil deck to want. This 4 mana is quite a lot. Hecht, False God. 4 black and a black for a 6/6 legendary creature, Elder Spirit. It has flying and lifelink. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you may pay 3 life. If you do, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 0/1 Warlock and it has 1 mana 1 mana sacrifices creature, surveil 1. No tap. 6 mana is a lot of mana, but flying and lifelink are pretty good stats, and just being able to save all your creatures, including this one, by the way, actually. If you kill this, you can use the pay 3 life to save it and keep a 0/1 copy of it around. And I do smell potential Reanimator shenanigans. The pay 3 life is going to be a bit of a problem there, but I could see a world where you loop a creature that gains you a lot of life and does something else to help you win the game. Like if you can somehow get Grey Merchant of Asphodel plus like a Reanimator loop going, I could see a world where that's pretty good. Yeah, Het probably needs some jank to be good, but I think if that jank exists, Het's going to be pretty good. Now he's calling. Het's Call is 3 a black and a black for an instant. It costs 3 less to cast. If it targets a creature with mana value 3 or less, you return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It can't block this turn. We've seen these effects quite a few times before in other sets. They're usually pretty decent, so I like this. This seems pretty solid. High Priestess Simi is 2 a black and a black for a 3/5 legendary creature human warlock. Other creatures you control get +1/+0, and you can pay 2 and a white to exile target non-land permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard. You may cast a copy of that card without paying its mana cost. Activate only once each turn, and only as a sorcery. Huh. You go in reading black Reanimator card, and it kind of reads as more just good mid-range card. Like, I would expect this in white, but the fact that it's in black is actually very interesting. I like that. The Anthem, the mini Anthem is very nice. This is a 3/5 body. That's just good stats for the cost. This is gonna dodge a lot of like removal, and the 2 and a white mode is just really decent cost. Like, you pay 3 mana to get back something that costs 3. Like, the math of that just makes sense. I mean, yes, you can bring back creatures, but also stuff like Banishing Lights. You're very happy to get back a Banishing Light with this. Hyper Simi, I see you. Good card. Hymn of the Overseer is 1 and a black for an instant. Return up to 1 target creature card and up to 1 other target warlock card from your graveyard to your hand. These cards always see a little bit of experimentation and usually never end up any good. Maybe this will be the one to buck the trend, but I do doubt it. It's Just Business. A single black mana for an enchantment. When it enters, each opponent discards a card. You can pay 2 and a black to sacrifice this enchantment and surveil 2, and has Pursuit for 2 and a black. You know, interesting. Hopeless Nightmare was technically good enough to get banned in Standard, though that was a lot about the cards that were supporting it. This is sort of Hopeless Nightmare shaped. Like, I guess I could see a world where it's decent. That Pursuit cost is expensive, but in the point of the game where you're playing this, you're kind of using it to strip your opponent's last card in hand, and that's usually pretty priceless. So, yeah, I could see it. And again, this is a card that also sacks very well 2 other Pursuit cards. So if you're playing this, you can Pursuit something else with it, and then use Pursuit to get this out as well. So yeah, I think this could actually be really good. League of Their Own is 3 a black and a black for a 4/5 creature human mercenary. It has Menace, and whenever it enters or attacks, you exile up to 1 target creature card from a graveyard. If a creature card is exiled this way, you gain 3 life. If a land card is exiled this way, create a treasure token. If a non-creature, non-land card is exiled this way, draw a card. You do have double periods on draw a card there, be aware. Don't want that. 5 mana 4/5, enter, do something with Menace. I think unfortunately it's just going to be a little too expensive. 5 mana 4/5s, or 5, not 5/4, that's 5 mana creatures need to win the game when they basically enter. Or at least win the game, not win the game. They need to win the game if they stick around, and I don't think this quite does that, unfortunately. Listen In is a single black mana for a sorcery. Choose a non-land card type. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a card of that type from it. Exile that card. You lose 1 life. Yeah, that is just really solid. If you happen to know what type of game plan your opponent is on, this is just going to be a Thoughtseize that exiles and costs 1 less life. Obviously, if your opponent is on a very varied type game plan, this will probably be a little worse, but even then you just pick the card you're most scared of and you sometimes snipe it, and otherwise it's probably going to be a little sad, but yeah. This will punish in like anyone who's like an all-in creatures deck or all-in enchantments deck. This will do very well against them. And even without that, if it's like open deck lists, you can kind of just calculate what you want to hit based on what you've seen of your opponent's deck so far. Madness of Ages is 1 in the black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 1. You can pay 2 a black and a black to sacrifice this enchantment to return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, but only as a sorcery. 2 mana, surveil 1 on upkeep is mediocre, but not bad. And 4 mana to return something is the rate, but on top of 2 mana is not great. I think this is probably not going to get there. Malicious Pact Maker is 1 in a black for a creature, human, warlock. Whenever it enters or attacks, you create an Acolyte token. Ooh, okay. And whenever you surveil, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. It gains a menace until on a turn. Oh, no trigger once. Ooh, okay. This is very spicy. Yeah, I'm a big fan of this card. It's yet another Raise the Alarm, though this one can potentially make 3 or 4 or 5 tokens. Getting a counter whenever you surveil is great, and Menace on top of that is also great. And you can get that Menace before blockers are declared, because this is an attack trigger. So that's very nice too. Yeah, this is just a really solid card. Convert the Acolytes you make into +1/+1 counters. You use the pay 1 mana to sack them, or just use them as fodder. Yeah, get Malicious Pact Maker. If a Warlock's deck is a thing, this goes in for sure. Offer Yourself is a single black mana for an enchantment. When it enters, you create an Acolyte token. Okay, be aware this is 1 mana for 2 cardboards. That's always good. You can pay 1 in the black and sacrifice a creature to choose one. Draw a card or gain 3 life. Damn, this is a good enchantment. Comes with fodder that you can immediately use on the 2 mana mode if you want to just cycle or gain 3 life. Yeah, that is just really solid. I would be shocked if this didn't see play in just like your average pursuit list. Patient Executioner is 3 a black and a black for a 3/5 creature, bird mercenary. It has flying, and when it enters, search your library for a card with pursuit, put it into your graveyard, and then shuffle. We've seen a couple good pursuit cards, but I don't think they're so good that you're willing to pay 5 mana to get them in the graveyard to cast them for that pursuit cost. So unfortunately, I don't think this gets there. Race for the Glory is 1 a black and a black for an enchantment. As it enters, choose a creature type. Whenever a creature control of the chosen type dies during your turn, you may return another target creature card of the chosen type with lesser mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield. Yeah, that's pretty decent, I think. There's a cannon card, I believe, that is a Jund card from Streets of New Capenna that does something similar, but it's once a turn with any non-land permanent type. So this is any one creature type, but it can be unbound. There may be a combo shenanigan there. I'm certainly not smart enough to do it, but if you can figure that out, that's cool. Otherwise, I could see a world where you're like an Aristocrats deck and use this to like get fodder out constantly with like your Warlocks. I mean, obviously it's not good with your Acolyte tokens, but other stuff is pretty decent. And if like maybe you can use it like hedge your bets against a board wipe too. Maybe. It reads to me as more of a commander type card, but I could see a world where it's good in standard or rev. Shriek of the Shroud is 4 a black and a black for a creature horror. It is flying. When it enters, each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life, and has basic land cycling for 1 and a black. Yeah, that's pretty good rate. You know, a lot of these land cyclers have been impressing me just on like how decent they are on top of being like having basic land cycling, and I mean decent for being a common. That is, like if a Pauper deck ever was able to do a Reanimator deck, I feel like this would be like #1 target right here. And even like outside of that, like if you can somehow get this out pretty early, like it's not bad. 4/3 flyer is a lot of pressure. The lose 2 life ping is going to add up, and the discard a card is card advantage. Like that's just good. Skittering Striker is 2 and a black for a 3/1 creature, rat mercenary. When it dies, if you control another mercenary, return it to the battlefield under its control with a +1/+1 counter on it, and it loses all abilities. If this was 2 mana, I think it would be really solid, but for 3 mana, I'm just not quite into it. Slinking Swift Blade is 2 and a black for a 3/2 creature, rat mercenary. It has menace and pursuit for 2 and a black. That is going to be too expensive for constructed on both halves of this card. South Street Scoundrel is a single black mana for a 1/1 creature, snake mercenary. It has Death Touch, and you can pay black and exile this card from your graveyard to have each opponent lose 1 life and you gain 1 life, but only as a sorcery. Not quite worth it, I think. Even if it was a 1 mana 1/1 Death Touch that just entered to ping an opponent for 1 and you gain 1, we wouldn't want it. The fact that you have to pay an additional mana is not nice. The intent here is to sack it with Pursuit, but we've already seen there are much better cards to sack with Pursuit so far. Next we have Soya. I'm going to say Soya. Null Executioner. 2 and a black for a 3/4 legendary creature, bird mercenary. With Death Touch, when it enters or attacks, you may sacrifice another non-land permanent. If you do, draw a card and put a loyalty counter on her. You can pay 1 in a green to transform Soya, but only as a sorcery and only if there is a loyalty counter on her. And then the backside is Soya, Guild Pariah. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to Soya, destroy that creature. The The +1 has each opponent lose 2 life and you gain 2 life. The -1 returns any permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. And the -2 is to create a 1/1 black and green mercenary creature token with Death Touch. This is an interesting one to evaluate. Obviously, 3 mana, 3/4 Death Touch is a really freaking good stat line. Entering or attacking to sacrifice any non-permanent and draw a card is pretty good. Having that on enters is nice, and it's, again, 3 mana, 3/4 Death Touch. Like, that's a good stat line just to start. And the transform cost is not too oppressive. Though, honestly, I don't know how often I actually want to flip Soya. Like, the 3 mana, 3/4 that can pressure my opponent and sack to draw is pretty solid. The backside, I mean, the -1 is pretty great. I think the +1's probably decent too. The -2 is definitely the worst mode here, but you use it if you're desperate, right? This is like a good way to protect Soya, besides the passive protecting her naturally. Yeah, no, the whole card's just a good package. I mean, I think there's compelling reasons to only want Soya sometimes, and there's compelling reasons to, like, just flip as soon as you can. Being able to rebuy stuff from the graveyard is always very solid on a Planeswalker. Next, we have Thing in the Dark. 1 in black for a 5/5 creature horror. It enters tapped with 4 stun counters on it. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, you untap this creature, and you can pay 1 in the black to exile 2 cards from your graveyard, to draw a card and lose 1 life. Activate only if the creature has a stun counter on it. Weird design. This is hard to evaluate for sure, but I think it's decent. Just having it be 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, like, there's obviously it works with Pursuit, but like ton of other cards that could work with, like Scavenging Ooze untaps this really fast, and then you can kind of use it as a combat trick once it no longer has stun counters on it, which is nice. And the draw mode for when it is still stunned is pretty decent rate, honestly. Just 2 mana, exile 2 cards, draw and lose 1 life. Yeah, that's not bad. This whole package, pretty solid. Tragic Accident is 2 in a black for an instant. Each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature of their choice. If you control a mercenary, create a Chester token. Probably just a bit too expensive or constructed. You really want these edicts to be 2 mana. Veteran Hunter is 2 in a black for a creature rat mercenary. When it enters, up to 1 target creature sacrifices it unless that player pays 3 life and discards a card. Oof. And that pursuit cost is 1 in a black and a black. These Punisher cards are always hard because you have to evaluate them as a little worse as they read. But that pursuit cost is nice. I think ultimately this is just not going to quite get there. I could see a world where it does, but I don't think it's going to get there. Volwood Proselytizer is 1 in a black for a 2/1 creature Treefolk Warlock. It has lifelink, and you can pay 3 in a black to return this card from your graveyard to your hand. Yeah, solid little grindy tool for limited. For constructed, it's a pass. And our final black card is With Impunity. 3 in a black for an instant. This spell costs 2 less to cast. If you sacrifice a permanent this turn, exile target creature. Pretty good with fetch lands. Otherwise, I think you probably do not want it. And honestly, yeah, I don't think this is a card you want. Hitting a creature is obviously very nice, but I think there's better removal spells that key off fetch lands or are just more consistent if you don't happen to have a fetch land that turn. So I think it's okay, but not quite good enough in general. Definitely good and limited, though. Absolutely jamming and limited. That is the end of black. My eyes are getting a little watery and blurry, so I think I will pick this up in the morning with the latter half of the set. So Provocative signing off to sleep, and I will be back in like 2 seconds for the viewers. Bye-bye. And we're back again. Brazen Burglar is 2 in a red for a 3/3 creature human rogue. It has haste. It says players can't gain life, and whenever a creature an opponent controls leaves the battlefield, this creature deals 1 damage to that player. This is just an extremely solid aggro card. 3 mana 3/3 haste is already where you want to be for a lot of these red 3-drops. The fact that players can't gain life is a very nice bonus, and the ping whenever an opponent loses a creature is going to be very solid as well. This card is just an extremely good package, and I mean, I would be shocked if it didn't see a ton of play. The card is just good. Speaking of cards that are just good, Burn It All Down is 1 a red and a red for a sorcery that says Burn It All Down deals 3 damage to each creature and you surveil free. Again, really solid card. Wrath of the Gods is like just a good card, and while this misses out on the exile mode, surveil 3 is more than appreciated, arguably even better. So I think Burn It All Down, I would also be shocked if it did not see any play, because it is just extremely good. And the hits don't stop coming. We have Daring Escapees. 2 in a red for a 3/1 creature cat rogue. It has haste, and whenever it or another rogue you control enters, up to one target creature can't block this turn. If you're all in on rogues, there is no reason not to be in on Daring Escapees. Basically invalidating all of your opponent's blocking ability because every time you play a rogue, this is just going to come out and say, nope, you don't get to block. And again, every single rogue you play is just going to shrink the amount of blockers your opponent has. And with Rogue's mechanic, oh no, what was Rogue's mechanic? Oh, Pursuit. So with Rogue's mechanic being Pursuit, this is going to be very solid in just letting you recast stuff from the yard to get additional can't blocks. Delias, Savvy Smuggler, is 1 in a red for a 2/1 legendary creature Snake Rogue. You may cast the spell without a flash as long as blue mana is spent to cast it. Delias can't be blocked by creatures with power 1 or less, and whenever opponent draws a card except the first one they draw on each of their draw steps, Delias deals 2 damage to them. Delias is an interesting card for Constructed. Obviously, hitting out on draws is pretty nice. The flash can certainly matter, and the unblockable, well, it's not going to come up always, is going to come up decently often, for dodging stuff like tokens. But all in all, I think this is more of a CEDH card if you mix it up with wheels. If you can spin wheels, you're going to just burn your opponents to death very fast. There's a chance that such a strategy could be potent in Constructed as well, but a lot of wheels printed these days are either one-sided or make it optional for your opponent, so I don't know how much utility Delias is actually going to have in that regard. Disgruntled Crook is 1 in a red for a 2/2 creature human rogue. When it enters, it deals 2 damage to any non-creature target. This just going face is already really nice. Viashino Pyromancer was a very solid card back in its day, and while we have progressed a little bit in terms of power levels since then, I think the additional point of toughness and the ability to target planeswalkers or battles is a really nice upside. Friendly Misdirection is a single red mana for an enchantment aura. It has enchant creature, and enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has haste, and whenever it attacks, you may pay 1. When you do, target creature you don't control can't block this turn. It's sort of like a weird kind of sideways hammer hand. You don't get the ETB can't block, but you do get the +1/+1 and haste, and you can pay an additional cost each turn to get the can't block. It is overall going to be more mana than Hammerhand, but I think that's going to be mana well spent if you can consistently weave this into your curve and make your opponent just have less blockers to work with each turn. This Rogues deck is going to just make sure that your opponent can't block ever. Frontline Victor is 1 a red and a red for a creature Azra Rebel. It has trample and haste. Other rebels you control have trample. Whenever you cast a creature spell, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. A pretty solid little card. 3 mana 3/2 trample haste is not a bad stat line. Giving your other rebels trample is also great. And the muster, just being able to pump it once or twice or 3 times, or however many times you cast a rebel, is also pretty good. It's not going to blow you out of the water, but it will be a solid role player in any rebels deck. Furious Resolve is 1 in a red for an instant. Target creature gets +3/+2 until end of turn. It and other rebels you control gain trample until end of turn. This is pretty much a limited card. Herald of Emergence is 3 a red and a red for a 3/4 creature horror. It has Menace. When it enters, if you cast it, create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control, except it has haste, and at the beginning of your end step, sacrifice this creature. So this is a 5 mana 3/4 Menace, which is not the greatest stat line, but with that powerful ETB, it's not bad. Just being able to copy anything on your side of the board is pretty solid. And if you have ways to keep the token around, like maybe a Sundial of the Infinite, this goes up in value rapidly. Combo applications seem unlikely with the if you cast it clause, and only being able to target creatures you control is a bit less utility compared to being able to maybe grab your opponent's biggest thing. But these cards do occasionally see play, so I wouldn't be surprised if this made it. Impatient Bandits is 2 in a red for a 4/3 creature human rogue. You know what? I'm just realizing earlier when I said Pursuit was the rogue mechanic, that is not correct. It was Spectacle. I meant to say Spectacle, which would make more sense with all the pingers. My bad. Spectacle, to be clear. Impatient Bandits is 2 in a red for a 4/3 creature human rogue. It has trample, it can't attack alone, and it can't block. This is a limited card. Sorry, let me just clarify, just to make extra sure. When I was talking about this card, this is for Spectacle. It does not make sense for Pursuit. Spectacle means you can actually hit more often with this because it's making sure that your opponent can't block, so you can deal combat damage. There we go. Okay. Impromptu Exit is 1 in a red with, there we go, Spectacle. 1 in a red for a sorcery Spectacle. Destroy up to 1 target artifact. Impromptu Exit deals 1 damage to any number of target opponents and each creature and planeswalker they control. This isn't bad. 2 mana for this effect is about what I would expect. The 1 mana version, I think it's called Stop the Festivities. The 1 mana version of this that doesn't hit artifacts, but just hit all creatures and enemy players, is decent. You know, if you can get that plus destroy an artifact for 1 mana, you are probably pretty happy. Liberated Convert is 1 in a red for a 2/1 creature bird rebel. When you cast a creature spell, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. This is a limited card. Make a Break for it is 6 a red and a red for sorcery. It costs 1 less to cast for each card type among cards in your graveyard. Excuse me, I just woke up. And then it says discard your hand, then draw 7 cards. Exile, make a break for it. This is a solid little card. If you have, let's say, Delirium enabled, it's 4 mana to discard your hand and draw 7 cards. That's a pretty good rate. And if you can make it 3 mana or 2 mana to cast, you are really happy about that. Make a Break for it is going to be a card that's tough to evaluate, but I think it has a chance of doing some good work. Makeshift Justice is a single red mana for an instant. Target creature you control gets +X/+O and gains first target until end of turn, where X is the number of spells you cast this turn. I don't think this is going to be going in the muster deck. I think this is a Storm card. This can be your Storm win con after you cast 10 or 12 spells in a turn to go ahead and just smack the opponent for 10 or 12 damage. It's probably not as good as your typical Storm payoff, but the fact that it's an instant means that you can swing in with all your creatures that you've generated in your Storm deck. Your opponent has to block best they can, because if they let even a single one through, they've risked Makeshift Justice coming down and dealing out some justice to their life total. So I think Makeshift Justice in a Storm deck, pretty solid. Otherwise, unlikely. Patrol Veteran is 3 in a red for a 4/2 creature human rebel. When it exiles, you exile the top. When it enters, you exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play one of those cards until the end of your next turn. This is just not going to be a constructed card. Reap the Rewards is 3 in a red for an enchantment. Whenever one or more creatures you control do combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token, and you may pay white, blue, black, red, green to shuffle your library, then exile the top card. Until end of turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost. Activate only as a sorcery. This is a cute little card that lets you generate treasure tokens and then free cast the top of your library over and over again. Unfortunately, 4 mana is a lot to ask up front, and you don't actually start doing anything truly worthwhile until you spend an additional 5 mana of all colors. So I think Reap the Rewards is just going to be too expensive for constructed. But if you can ever make this work in limited, you are my hero. Reckless Show Off is 3 a red and a red for a 4/4 creature bird rogue. It has Spectacle for 2 red. It has Flying, and at the beginning of your end step, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent and each permanent you don't control that was dealt damage this turn. So this is a nice little just way to ping all the stuff that your opponent has that was dealt damage as an extra bonus. You can go ahead, if you hit the opponent, obviously you get an additional 1 damage. If you hit creatures, you can hit another 1 damage on them, potentially killing them if your opponent has not set up their blocks correctly. It is a card that I would be shocked if it was really strong, but I think it's just like a good 4-drop, you're probably pretty happy. As a 5-drop, maybe not so much, but if you can consistently get it out for 4, it's pretty solid. Shatter Records is 1 a red and a red for sorcery with Spectacle for 1 and a red. Surveil 2, then exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play them until the end of your next turn. If you can consistently cast this for the Spectacle cost, it is going to be so freaking good. Reckless Impulse is obviously a great card, and this is better when the Spectacle cost is online. If you're paying 1 red for this, you're not exactly unhappy, but it's definitely decidedly worse. So you really want to make sure you have that spectacle cost online. And if you do, this is very interesting. Scrawny Purse Snatcher is 1 in a red for a 2/1 creature cat rogue. It has first strike during your turn, and whenever it attacks, you create a treasure token. At the beginning of your next end step, sacrifice that token. Sort of a weird mana dork that lets you spend 1 extra mana per turn. You have to spend the treasure token in the turn, but if you do, you're probably pretty happy with this. It's just a solid little card. You know, if you're looking for a ramp in red, this is going to do a pretty decent job. Shroudwalker is 5 in a red for a 5/4 creature skeleton horror. It has trample, haste, and basic land cycling for 1 in a red. Yet another pretty good basic land cycler. If you're looking for your reanimator spell to come with some instant damage, this is going to be a pretty decent option to reanimate. And if you just want something that can trample over your opponent, hey, this does that as well. Just a good card as well. Sieging Volley Mage is a single red mana for a 1/1 creature human rebel wizard. It has muster. Whenever you cast a creature spell, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. And whenever an opponent is dealt damage by 1 or more sources you control for the 3rd time during each of your turns, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. I should note, this does not care about non-combat damage, so you can use all instances of combat damage. And when I say all instances, I mean first strike damage and then regular damage. 1 or more creatures dealing damage at the same time counts as 1 source of damage, I believe, because this is talking about 1 or more sources. But you can use combat damage to help put the final counter on this if you need. So if you cast 2 spells and then swing in and hit with a creature, this will get your counter. And this is also just a good card even without the counter. Pinging an opponent whenever you cast a creature spell is a pretty decent rate for a 1-mana 1/1. Spice of Life is 2 in a red for an instant. It deals 4 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. This is a limited card. Split the Loot is 3 in a red for an instant. Discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards +1. Create 2 treasure tokens. I adore this card for completely unrelated reasons to Constructed. I have a deck in Commander that reduces basically all your Spellslinger costs to like 1 mana. And this would do so well in there because it's basically a ritual that also just gives me a free new hand. And that sounds so cool. That being said, I think for Constructed, this actually could be decent. I believe the card name is Big Score or Unexpected Windfall. Both have each seen play before to help ramp into really big spells that you want to cast. And this does something similar while arguably digging even deeper. So I think Split the Loot could actually be really solid. Steady Flurry is a single red mana for an instant. It deals 2 damage divided as you choose among up to 1 target opponent and up to 1 target non-player target. So this is kind of an interesting shock variant where this can go face, can also ping a creature or planeswalker for 2, and it also can ping one of those things for 1 and send the other 1 damage upstairs. It is just strictly better than a shock, which is pretty nice. If you are running shock, you probably want this. And this is going to occasionally let you kill something and ping the opponent for 1, which is going to be nice for your spectacle. Speaking of 1 mana removal spells, we have Strangle. Deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. A reprint from canon and a very welcome one. 1 mana deal 3 to something is going to just be a solid rate that you want. It's going to kill a bunch of different 2-drops and 3-drops that normally would dodge 2 damage removal. And being sorcery speed isn't even that much of a downside because, again, this is 1 mana. Streetwise Surveyor is 4 in a red for a 3/5 creature human rogue. Excuse me. A spectacle for 3 in a red. It has reach, and you can tap it to have it deal 2 damage to each opponent. This is pretty much a limited card. Sunder the Cage is 2 a red and a red and a red. That's 5 mana. For a sorcery, it deals 5 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets. Sort of an interesting little board wipe that can also go upstairs. It's probably not going to see constructed play, though I wouldn't be surprised if just 5 mana deal 5 upstairs is a card that sees some play in like mono red aggro as your final spell of the game. But for limited, this is absolutely going to be a house. Sunset Champion is 2 a red and a red for a 5/4 creature Snake Rebel. It has Trample. Whenever it enters or attacks, you exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play one of those cards until the end of your next turn. Creature spells you cast this way cost 1 less to cast. This is a 4-mana 5/4 that just draws a card each turn. Like, that is just super freaking solid. It exiles until the end of your next turn, so you're pretty much always going to be able to play the card you draw. You get a cost reduction, which is going to help your muster deck be even better because you'll be able to chain your spells really well. The card is just really freaking solid. Sunset Recruit is a single red mana for a 1/1 creature cat rebel. It has first strike and haste, and you can pay 1 in a red to have target creature with power 2 or less be unable to be blocked this turn. This is another rebel that you solidly want to consider running. 1 mana first strike haste is going to be just able to ping in on the first opponent's turn. You may want to even splash this into rogues because it can enable spectacle costs pretty quick, and the unblockable is nice as well. Tear Down is 3 in a red for sorcery. It deals 6 damage to target creature, and creature tokens can't block this turn. This is a limited card. Tenacious Thief is 3 in a red for a 4/3 creature human rogue. It has Spectacle for 1 in a red and discard a card. It has Trample, and you may cast a spell from your graveyard for its Spectacle cost. If you do, it enters tapped. This is a nice, really grindy Spectacle card. Just being able to cast it from your graveyard if your opponent lost life this turn is really nice, especially if you can ditch a land or something like that. 4/3 Trample is a pretty good rate for 2 mana, even if you have to give up a card to do it. And remember, you can also cast it from its Spectacle cost from the front. So if you have a 1 mana creature that you can hit with, this comes down on turn 2 as a 4/3 that comes back later. That's just a good rate. Next, we have Unending Unrest. 4 a red and a red for sorcery. Choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type gain first strike, menace, and trample until end of turn. After this main phase, there is an additional combat phase. At the beginning of each combat this turn, untap all creatures that attacked this turn. This is just another decent card. Extra combats do usually not see play in Constructed, but First Strike, Menace, and Trample all together are a pretty solid reason to maybe think this will buck the trend. And this does also work with your other additional combats, and you can play it in your first main, which a lot of extra combats cannot do. Vi, the first hero, is a single red mana for a 2/1 legendary creature, Cat Rebel. It has Muster, and whenever you cast a creature spell, put a loyalty counter on Vi. And then you can pay 1 and a white to prevent all damage that would be dealt to Vi this turn. At the beginning of your next main phase, Transformer. Activate only if there's a loyalty counter on Vi. And once she's transformed, she is Vi, Fallen Hope. She has Muster. Whenever you cast a creature spell, put a legendary counter on Vi. You can activate her 0 ability to exile target creature you can own and control, and then cast it without paying its mana cost. The -2 has to deal 2 damage to any target, and you gain 2 life. And the -3 has you exile the top 3 cards of your library and play those cards until the end of your next turn. This is probably one of the better of the flip walkers that we've seen so far. 1 mana 2/1 is just a really solid rate. Jackal Pup's never ever been a bad card ever, and this is definitely a lot better than Jackal Pup. Getting loyalty counters just from casting creature spells is going to have this grow loyalty counters pretty fast. The fact that it can survive 1 combat and then flip is really nice. And you can also just activate this on your opponent's turn if they try to cast a removal spell, or you can use it as a chump blocker and then pay 1 and a white to have her flip during your next turn. Like, she just does a lot of solid little tricky things with that ability. And once you flip, every single one of these abilities is gas for a Rebels deck. The 0 ability, being able to let you get another cast trigger, is very solid. The -2 will go ahead and just clear a small thing and give you some life gain, which is nice to sustain. And the -3 will dig you a lot deeper into finding more rebels and more cast triggers. Vi is just a very solid 1-drop. Next we have Vi's Lieutenant. 1 in a red for a 2/2 creature cat rebel as first strike, and whenever you cast a creature spell, non-token creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Another very solid red creature for the Rebels deck. Just being able to anthem your board every time you cast a creature spell is very solid, and this does a first strike, so it's going to be able to pitch in for even more damage. Vi's Lieutenant is just an extremely solid 2-drop. Rebels looking spicy so far. Wistful Strategist is 1 in a red for a 1/2 creature cat rebel. It has Muster. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may discard a card, then draw a card. And this, remember, that can be done in an empty hand. And then it has exile 3 cards from your graveyard. Put a +1/+1 counter to this creature. Activate only once each turn and only outside of combat. That can be done on your opponent's turn as well. I was prepared to write this off. 2 mana 1/2 is not exactly where you want to be, but the fact that this grows so easily and loots every time you cast a creature spell and can do it on an empty hand, this card has a lot of neat little tricks going for it. Being able to be activated on your opponent's turn. So if you play this, immediately activate the Exile ability, 2/3. Activate it again on your opponent's turn, 3/4. Back to your turn, you can activate it one more time. It's now a 4/5 swinging in, and you can do additional stuff with it. That is just really solid. Yoink is 1 of the red for sorcery. Up to what target creature can't block this turn. Up to 1 target rogue you control gains a menace until end of turn. You may discard a card. If you do, target player draws 2 cards. Normally this creature can't block effect doesn't see play for constructed, but the fact that this is just a tormenting voice that also helps you like swing in is really solid. That's potentially 3 blockers that you can take care of with this, because, or sorry, 2 blockers that you can take care of with this, because 1 target creature can't block, and then your opponent will need 2 additional blockers to block your rogue. So this will help enable your spectacle costs and dig you towards finding more spectacle cards or more rogues. It's just a solid little like red draw spell. Okay, before we move on to green, we are going to pause there to give my voice a little break, and I'll be back in a moment. And we are back once more. Starting off with Blossoming Steward, 1 and a green for a 1/2 creature treefolk druid. It has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, you gain 1 life, and whenever a land card is put into your graveyard from anywhere during your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. This ability triggers only once each turn. This grows off each of your fetches. If you loot or mill a land card away, this is also going to grow. The once each turn is definitely a limiter here in how potent the card could be, but I could see a world where you have an all-in druid deck that runs this as like your last druid, just because, you know, it kind of synergizes with what the deck wants to do. Corner the Prey is 3 green and a green for sorcery. It says choose target creature you control. Draw cards equal to its power. Until end of turn, that creature gains trample and must be blocked if able. Normally these types of effects don't see constructed play, but the fact that this can potentially kill 1 or more creatures your opponents control is pretty solid. It'll have to be evaluated as such. Creeping Overgrowth is X a green for an instant. Return up to X target cards with different mana values from your graveyard to your hand. Exile Creeping Overgrowth. I want to like this card, but unfortunately I think it's just a little too expensive for your average constructed play. We have seen cards like Shigeki see play in constructed before, and Shigeki obviously had some other things going for it. This is technically cheaper than Shigeki, because it is, again, 1 mana cheaper, but Shigeki was able to return lots of different things from your graveyard to your hand while also being just a solid 2-drop, and it didn't have that mana value limitation. So I think I'm going to prefer cards like Shigeki to Creeping Overgrowth. Culvert Inspector is 2 and a green for a 3/3 creature rat druid. It can't be blocked by creatures with a power 2 or less, and at beginning a combat on your turn, if you're ancient, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Potentially an interesting inclusion. If you can basically have this online turn 3 or turn 4, it could have some utility as a 3-mana 3/3 that grows your board a little bit each turn and is somewhat hard to block. But I don't think it's likely you have ancient onlines consistently enough to make this good. Defend the Groves is 1 and a green for an instant. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control if it's a druid, and then it fights target creature your opponent controls. This is a limited card. Dockside Hawker is 2 and a green for a 1/3 creature cat citizen. When it enters, you create a weapon token, and you may attach to a creature you control. This is another limited card. Due Reward is 1 and a green for an enchantment. When it enters, you mill 3 cards, and then you may return a permanent card from among them to your hand. You can pay 2 and sacrifice this enchantment to gain 3 life, and has Pursuit for 1 and a green. Solid little cantrip, you know. It has pseudo flashback, and again, this is another card that you really don't mind sacking 2 Pursuit as well. I think the black cards are probably a little more enticing to play, but if you're running like a deck that really is on mill or wants to dig for like a permanent card, I think this is a reasonable option to include. End the Chase is 1 and a green for sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. As Pursuit for 3, a green and a green. This is a difficult card to evaluate because obviously sorcery speed damage is not great for 2 mana, but having that pursuit cost on the backside is extremely interesting. Just being able to cast it from your graveyard a second time, like pseudo flashback, is a nice thing to be holding over your opponent's head. Any big creature you have has to be dealt with before you deploy a threat of your own, otherwise this is going to just kill it. So, for the potential of that threat, I think this could be interesting. Esteemed Exterminator is 1 a green and a green for a 4/4 creature, human mercenary. Whenever this or another creature you control enters, if that creature entered from your graveyard or you cast it from your graveyard, you may have that creature fight target creature you don't control, and has pursuit for 2 green. This card is incredible. 3 mana 4/4 is already a pretty decent stat line for your green 3-drop. And the fact that it can come back with pursuit is great. And the fact that it comes back and hits something of your opponent is even better. And the fact that it gives that ability to all your other creatures is excellent. In your pursuit deck or your reanimator deck, you are so happy to jam this and just crush your opponent's creatures over and over again. Esteemed Exterminator, I love you. What an excellent card. Find Your Prey is 1 and a green for an instant. It costs 1 less to cast if it targets a mercenary. Target creature gets +6/+3 and gains trample until end of turn. This is mostly a limited card. I could see a world where in a constructed deck that happens to have a lot of cheap mercenaries, you use this to kind of do a prowessy type deck, but from what I've seen of mercenaries so far, they don't exactly lean in that direction. Gutter Rat is 2 and a green for a 3/3 creature rat mercenary. It has trample. When it enters, you choose up to 1 target card with pursuit you own in exile and put that card into your graveyard. That is right, you can rebuy another pursuit card. Unfortunately, I don't think you want to be playing a 3 mana 3/3 to do so. If this was 1 or 2 mana, it might be more enticing, but as is, I believe this is a card you only want in limited. Heart of the Grove is 3 green for an enchantment. As it enters, you choose a creature type. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature card of the chosen type or a land card from among them onto the battlefield, then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. It's going to be pretty difficult for this to whiff. I think you probably want to go for tribes that have a little more oomph compared to the tribes in this set, who generally all seem to be lower on the curve. We haven't seen all of the druids yet, so I may be wrong there, but generally I think you want to name like dragons or Eldrazi or any like Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, Serpent type thing with this, and really cheat in some massive creatures. The fact that this does have the case of being able to grab a land if you don't find the creature type that you want is also a nice little bonus. Hired Hand is 4 and a green for a 4/5 creature human mercenary. It has vigilance and pursuit for 3 green. This is going to be a limited card. Leonin Revivalist is 1 and a green for a 1/1 creature cat druid. When it enters, you may put a basic land card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. This is an interesting design because normally these cards that return lands from the graveyards are able to target fetches, which is the main use case. This cannot do that, so you're going to have to rely on stuff like mill or looting or land sacrifice to get that basic into the graveyard. Of course, you can always just put it from your hand into play, but generally those cards at 2 mana don't see play. So you have to be probably enabling this quite a bit more than you would normally to get it to work, and I just don't think it's going to get there. Laybound Ritualist is 3 a green and a green for a 5/5 creature treefolk druid. Here's one of those more expensive druids that we were looking for. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may mill 3 cards. You may play lands from your graveyard, and you can pay 2 and a green to exile 5 cards from your graveyard to give creatures you control +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. And that is not sorcery speed. That is not once a turn. You can do that as many times as you like. I think this is pretty freaking solid. The fact that it just enables itself pretty easily each turn, except the turn it enters, is pretty decent. If you play this on turn 5, it doesn't die, and then turn 6, you can use it to hit your land drop, and then exile 10 cards from your graveyard to give creatures you control +2/+2 and trampling at them. Like, that's just pretty solid. It's likely going to be a bit slow for your average constructed deck, but I think it's worth a shot. Life from Death is 1 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever you sacrifice another permanent, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, surveil 2, or you gain 3 life. This is probably just going to be a little too low impact for 2 mana. None of these are effects that are worth even 1 mana, and the fact that you have to sacrifice permanents to get them is going to be a bit of a hoop because, unfortunately, this just doesn't do anything on its own without that additional help, so I don't think you're going to be wanting this. Outskirts Steward is a single green mana for a 1/1 creature human druid. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. This is just going to grow a bit too slowly. As a 1-drop, you're not going to be able to getting any value until like turn 3 or 4 at the soonest, so I just don't think you want Outskirts Steward. Reckless Smashing is 3 a green and a green for a sorcery. Creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. Whenever one or more creatures you control do a combat damage to a player this turn, destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent that player controls. This is going to be a great limited card. Overruns usually are, but for constructed, we've seen better versions of this effect not see play. Ruthless Duo is 2 and a green for a 1/1 creature human mercenary with Death Touch. When it enters, you create another 1/1 black and green mercenary creature token with Death Touch. 2 Death Touch creatures for 3 mana is about the rate you want. So if you're running an all-in Death Touch Matters deck, I think you want this. Otherwise, I think you are likely to pass on this. Cetral Arborist is 2 and a green for a 3/3 creature cat druid with Vigilance. Whenever you sacrifice a land, add 1 mana of any color, and it can tap to sacrifice a land and gain 3 life. Very potent effect. Obviously, with your fetches, you are going to be generating more mana. It is a 3 mana 3/3 Vigilance, which is a pretty good stat line. The life gain helps as well. The Vigilance will help you tap to sacrifice the land and swing in with this, which is nice too. You're generally going to want to run this with cards that sack your whole board, like Scapeshift, and ideally you would have a Lotus Cobra effect in there as well, so you're really generating a lot of mana. I don't know if this card is going to be good enough to see play, because sacrificing a land is a lot more niche than just playing a land, but I could see a world where it's potent. Cetral Mender is 2 a green and a green for a 2/4 creature tree folk druid. It has reach, and when it enters, you may return target druid. You return target druid or land card from your graveyard to your hand. I think this effect is probably just a little too expensive to see play for constructed. The Cetral Shaper is 1 and a green for a 2/3 legendary creature Azure Druid. When it or a land you control enters, you put a loyalty counter on it, and then you can pay 2 and a blue to transform it, only as a sorcery. And then it becomes Junie, Shaper Unbound, a Juniper legendary planeswalker. As long as you're ancient, you may activate the loyalty abilities of Junie twice each turn rather than only once. The +1 is Surveil 1, then draw a card. The 0 ability is tap target non-permanent and put a stun counter on it. And the -2 creates an XX green elemental creature token, where X is the number of lands you control. I think this card is good. If you're running a Druids deck or even just a Simic Landfall deck, I think you pretty much heavily want to consider this. 2 mana 2/3 is just a good stat line in the front. It's not going to do anything else, but for now, that is just solid enough, because when you flip it, you have a what I would call 5 mana Planeswalker worth of abilities here. As long as your Ancient mode turns this card truly insane, but even before then, +1 to draw a card, good. 0 mana to tap something and put a stun counter on it, great. Now I don't have to deal for something for 2 turns. And the -2 makes a big blocker, like a fucking huge blocker. And once you're Ancient, this card goes turbo mode. It starts generating cards and blockers like no one's business. So I think even though the front side is a little slow to get going, once you actually flip it, you are extremely happy with what you have. So I think this might be one of the most flip blockers in the set. Shape the Pattern is a single green mana for a sorcery. You may search, search your library for a basic land card. If you're Ancient, instead search your library for a creature or land card. Reveal that card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Really just a solid card. Early in the game, it lets you grab a basic to help fix your mana, and late game, grabbing any creature or land is just going to be really freaking good. And if you can enable this like turn 3 or 4, this could potentially have some combo applications, being just 1 mana. Shroud Piercer is a single green mana for a 1/1 creature horror. It has Death Touch. When it enters, you surveil 2, and you can pay 2 and a green to exile from your graveyard to surveil 2. I think this is actually pretty decent. 1 mana 1/1 Death Touch is okay. Entering to surveil 2 is already a pretty good deal. That's some lands you're putting into your graveyard from Ancient. You're digging deeper to the pieces you want to find. And then the fact that it also just has a mode from the graveyard after trading with an opponent's creature or milling it over is nice. Surveil 2 is not the greatest thing to be doing for 3 mana, but if you have nothing else going for you, it's nice to have that as an option. Spit Venom is 3 and a green for a sorcery. As additional cost to cast a spell, you may exile 3 cards from your graveyard. If you do, this spell costs 2 less to cast. Target creature you control gets +2/+1 until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. We've already seen some of the better bite effects in this set. I don't think we need to consider Spit Venom. Sproutling, try saying that 5 times fast, is 5 a green and a green for a creature plant. It has affinity for tokens, and when it enters, up to 2 target creatures get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. If you're an All-In's token deck, I certainly think you consider this. Just for example, if you're playing this in Revolution, giving your Kitsune Matriarch trample and +2/+2 is really freaking solid if you can manage to do it. So I think this would be a really nice add there. And I think just for a generic tokens deck, I think this is just a good card. Titanic Mycoid is 6 and a green for an 8/7 creature fungus giant with trample and basic land cycling for 1 and a green. Unfortunately, I do think this is probably the worst of the basic land cycling cycle, which is interesting because usually green gets to be one of the usually green gets the biggest of them, so the fact that it's the worst is kind of funny. But I still see a world where it could be decent. 8/7 is pretty hard for some decks to deal with. If you jam this against like mono red on turn 4 with your Reanimator, they're not going to know what the heck to do because that 8/7 stat line is just going to beat them to hell. Toxin Peddler is 1 and a green for a 2/2 creature bird mercenary. It has Death Touch. When it enters, up to 1 target creature you control gains Death Touch until end of turn. This is a limited card through and through. Trespass the Volwood is 2 and a green for an enchantment. As long as this enchantment is on the battlefield, it's a forest land into addition to its other types. And as long as you're ancient, this enchantment is a 5/5 tree folk creature in addition to its other types and has vigilance, reach, and haste. I think this card is freaking great. It's a 3-mana ramp spell that late games turns into a 3-mana 5/5 with all those good keywords. Like, missing trample is probably the only thing this card doesn't have, but everything else is really solid. 3-mana 5/5 with haste is nice. It can still tap for mana after that, and it just beats face so well. And obviously, it's going to contribute to Ancient itself, which is nice too. And again, if you have Ancient online turn 4 or turn 5, this card is well above rate. Unbridled Flourishing is 2 and a green for an instant. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put one onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your graveyard, then shuffle. This is going to be an interesting card for like landfall decks and ancient decks. The fact that it's an instant speed is going to be a nice little trick if you have any good landfall abilities. And putting into the graveyard means this card progresses 2 for ancient while also ramping you. That's just a good rate. Unerring Assailant is 3 a green and a green for a 5/5 creature human mercenary. It has trample and has haste as long as it entered from or was cast from a graveyard this turn. And then it has pursuit for 3 green. I think this is a decent little card for limited. I think for constructed, 5 mana on both modes is just going to be a bit too much of an ask. Venomous Solution is 2 and a green for an instant. Up to 2 target creatures each get +1/+1 and gain Hexproof and Death Touch until end of turn. 3 mana is just far too much to be paying for this type of effect, even if it does surprise kill some of your opponent's creatures. Volwood Deadeye is 1 and a green for a 3/2 creature Azure Mercenary. It has a reach. Whenever another mercenary you control enters, create a weapon token. You may attach it to a creature you control. This ability triggers only once each turn. This card is just super freaking solid. A 2-mana 3/2 that grows anytime you play another mercenary once a turn is going to be really good. And the fact that you can just put the weapon token wherever you'd like is really solid as well. If you're just playing this as a 2-mana 3/2, that's already a 2-mana 3/2 with reach, by the way, which is a pretty good stat line. You follow it up with a 3-drop. Now you can choose to make this a 2-mana 4/3 or grow your 3-drop. The modality there is very nice as well. Volwood Sentry is 3 and a green for a creature Treefolk Druid. It is a 6/6 with Defender and Reach. And as long as you're ancient, this creature can attack as though it doesn't have Defender. We've seen a much better version of this card already earlier in the set as the 3-mana 5/5. I am not interested in this. This is a limited card. Wayland Bloodhunter is 2 a green and a green for a 4/4 legendary creature Cat Mercenary. It has haste, and it can't be blocked by more than one creature. It must be blocked by a creature with a bounty counter on it if able. You can pay black to put a bounty counter on another target creature. It gains when this creature dies, each opponent draws a card and creates a treasure token. Activate only as a sorcery. I think this card is really freaking solid. A 4-mana 4/4 with haste that can't be blocked by more than one creature is already good. And the fact that you can have like a kicker mode to put a bounty counter on a thing an opponent controls, kill it, draw a card and create a treasure token for 5 mana. And then again, this is haste, so you can do it the turn that Wayland enters. That's just solid. Like, you're going to be drawing cards, generating mana, and that mana you generate lets you put more mana into bounty counters for the next turn. I think Wayland is just a really solid mono green or Golgari Stompy card. Either one would be happy to have it. Our final green card is Winding Assailant. 1 and a green for a 2/2 creature Snake Mercenary. It has Trample. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create a weapon token. You may attach it to a creature you control. I want to like this card, but a 2-mana 2/2 Trample that has to hit the opponent to do anything is going to be a really rough sell. We've seen cards like this just land flat on their face and constructed, and I don't quite think this gets there, even though generating a weapon token is generally better than just getting a +1/+1 counter. Unfortunately, I think this is going to be a pass. All right, next we have multicolored and colorless. I'll take a little break, and then we will go ahead and get started. And we're back for the final time. Avarice is 4 black and a red for a 5/5 creature Incarnation. It has Menace, and whenever it enters or attacks, you choose 2. Discard your hand, then draw 2 cards. Sacrifice a land, then create 2 treasure tokens. You lose 2 life. Avarice deals 2 damage to each of up to 2 targets. The 2 theme is very strong here, and I think the card is actually pretty solid. 6 mana 5/5 that discards your hand to draw 2 cards in the late game when you're low on cards is going to be pretty good. Sacrificing a land to create 2 treasure tokens is probably the weakest mode here, but I could see a world where it's useful, especially if you want to get lands into the yard. And losing 2 life to deal 2 damage to each of up to 2 targets is probably pretty solid. Overall, I don't think it's going to be a constructed mega staple, but I could see a world where a Reanimator deck wants it as sort of a solid, like, it's just a solid target that does a lot of things, or even just like a deck that wants an expensive beater at the top of the curve. Bond the Sundered Souls is green and a blue for an instant. When you cast it, if you're ancient, you may copy it. Look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, and the rest in the bottom of your library in any order. This is just going to be a very solid draw spell. If you're just playing it without the ancient mode, it's okay. 2 mana instant, look at the top 3, grab 1. It has seen play before, but it's generally not good enough. But the fact that when you copy it, it just draws you 2 cards for 2 mana with a lot of digging attached, that is really solid. So if you are in a deck that can enable Ancient very quickly, I think you are all in on Bond the Sundered Souls. Divine Liberation is 2 a red and a white for a sorcery. Untap and gain control of target non-land permanent until end of turn. Gains haste until end of turn. Then next end step, exile it. This is a really solid removal spell. Slave of Bolas is an iconic card, though it actually hasn't seen play very much, I don't believe. But the fact that this costs 1 less, can hit anything on the board, it's just so much more potent. The Boros mana is nice because a lot of control decks are running like Jeskai colors now, so Divine Liberation fits right in. I just think this is like a solid removal spell. Evrax the Last is 3 a green and a blue for a 4/4 legendary creature, Dragon Druid. It has flying. Whenever Evrax enters or attacks, you surveil 2, and the first spell you cast each turn costs X less to cast, where X is the number of land cards in your graveyard. Definitely a pretty potent payoff for filling your graveyard with lands. Notably, if Evrax is the first spell you cast in a turn, you do have to wait for your next turn to get that reduction, but you still get the ETB of Surveilling 2, which is nice. A 5 mana 4/4 flyer has pretty much always been the going rate, so I think Evrax is a solid little card. Definitely going to be a popular commander for sure. Founder's Echo. 1 a black and a red for a 2/4 creature horror shapeshifter. It has haste, and at the beginning of your end step, if a card left your graveyard this turn, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Potentially representing a 4-point life swing when it enters. This card can play pretty well with like small Reanimator decks. If you bring this back with like your Helping Hand type effects, you are going to be pretty happy. Unearth, obviously, great too. It's not going to be as good if you can't consistently enable that end step trigger though. Founder's Malice is 1 a blue and a black for a sorcery. You draw a card and gain 2 life. Each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life, and it has flashback for 3 blue black. This is just pretty solid. It is a 3 mana card that puts you up 3 points of card advantage because you draw, your opponent discards, and then you draw this card again in your flashback form. And then once you play it again, that's potentially 5 cards you've affected over 1 card you've paid. Founder's Malice is just solid. Greedy Deserter is 1 a blue and a red for a 3/2 creature rat rogue. It has Spectacle for X blue-red. When this creature enters, exile the top card of your library. If its Spectacle cost is paid, exile the top X cards of your library instead. You may play cards exiled this way until the end of your next turn. Unfortunately, I don't think this card is any good. 3 mana 3/2 to draw a card until the end of your next turn is like the bar of playability for these types of effects, and I'm not really interested in it, and as an is it rare. And while the Spectacle cost is nice, I don't know how many times you're going to be able to pump a lot of mana into it. Rogue decks seem to be pretty aggressive so far in that they want to get to the board early, so I don't know how much you used to have for like an expensive draw spell that comes with a 3/2. Guild Elite is black and a green for a 2/2 creature, human mercenary noble. Whenever it attacks, you may sacrifice another non-land permanent. If you do, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and has Pursuit for 1 black-green. This isn't a bad effect, but unfortunately the attack trigger and the pursuit trigger are going to cannibalize a lot of your cannibalize from each other a lot of the cards you would want to sacrifice to them. And in a pursuit deck, you have better cards to be getting back than a 3-mana 2/2 that conditionally grows. So I think it's just not quite going to get there. In Tune is 4 a green and a blue for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana of any type that land produced. I love me a good mana doubler, and the fact that this mana doubler draws me cards, oh boy, that is spicy. I think this is just a really solid Simic card. You know, a Simic is one of the few color pairs that can actually justify playing these expensive cards because it ramps into them really easily. And I think if you are running in Tune, you really want to be funneling that mana into something truly insane. And obviously, I think if this is Commander, you jam this every time. The card is sick. It All Comes Together is blue and a red for an enchantment. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this enchantment deals 1 damage to target opponent. Whenever opponent is dealt damage by one or more sources you control for the 3rd time each turn, draw a card. This is a nice little Spellslinger payoff. If you're running instants and sorceries, you can go ahead and jam this to, generally ping your opponent and eventually draw a card. And then it also copies with more copies of itself because, first of all, it triggers off casting another copy, and additional copies will progress you to the draw trigger even faster. I think this card is great. Just a really solid 2-mana card. Kane Unyielding is 2 a red and a white for a 2/5 legendary creature, Treefolk Rebel. It has Muster. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may pay 2. If you do, copy that spell. The copy becomes a token. Non-token creatures you control enter with X additional +1/+1 counters on them, where X is the number of other creatures you control with the same name. A very clever design. For every non-token creature you control, when you copy it, the copy will resolve first, and then the original will come in, meaning the original enters with a +1/+1 counter. While I think this is probably a pretty decent card for like a commander deck in Rebels, I don't think it's a constructed card. I think what's actually most interesting with this in Commander is running it with cards like Relentless Rats. Obviously, you can't run actual Relentless Rats, but something in that vein where you just generate as many of the same creature as you can over and over again to just stack the counters on it to high heaven. So I think Kane would be really fun in such a strategy. Malicious Throng is 1 white and a black for a 3/2 creature, human warlock. It has Vigilance and Menace. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create an Acolyte token. I find it hard to evaluate this card because 3 mana 3/2 Vigilance Menace is not a bad stat line. Making an Acolyte token whenever you cast a non-creature spell is decent. But does it all come together as like a playable card? That is the question. Because 3 mana 3/2 is very vulnerable to removal, right? And being able to create an Acolyte token is nice, but that's not actually a token that like fights for the board. It jump blocks well, and it's good sack fodder, but it can't actually kill your opponent. Like if you compare this to Sedgemoor Witch, which can kill your opponent, and it has done so very many times. Melodious Mallard is red and a green for a 1/2 creature, Bird Bard. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, put a +1/+1 counter to target creature control, and as tap, add 1 mana of any color. I think this is a really solid mana dork. 2 mana is where usually you want your mana dorks to be, that are 1 mana. Tapping for mana of any color is nice for fixing. And the +1/+1 counter every time you cast something big, which you're ramping, so yeah, you're going to be casting big stuff, it's just a nice bonus. Memoriam is 2 a blue and a black for an instant. You mill 4 cards. When you do, return up to 2 target non-creature, non-land cards from your graveyard to your hand. Exile Memoriam. This is a really solid draw spell. Having that selection there is going to be nice, and buying back your 2 best cards is going to be pretty brutal for your opponent to see. If you're grabbing back counter spells, wraths, planeswalkers, this does it all, and it's going to do it very well. You're going to be pretty happy with this every single time you play it. Orlus's Edict is one a black and a green for an enchantment. When it enters, you choose one. If you control a mercenary, you may choose both instead. Each opponent sacrifices a creature of their choice. Each opponent sacrifices a non-creature, non-land permanent of their choice. This is an enchantment because it helps you stick around, and it sticks around and helps pay pursuit costs. And then if you manage to have both modes go off by controlling a mercenary, you're going to be pretty happy with this. Blowing up a Banishing Light in a creature has always been the ideal for this type of effect, and it really depends on how often you can do that. But if you can, you're going to be pretty happy. And this can also go into flicker decks. There is no if it was cast trigger on this. So if you can manage to flicker this repeatedly, your opponent's board is going to be going bye-bye. Overprepared Accomplice is 1 a blue and a red for a 3/3 creature human rogue. Whenever it attacks, up to 1 other target attacking creature gains menace until end of turn. Whenever a rogue you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. This is just a really solid effect for a rogues deck. That first mode is not worth playing by itself, but the fact that it's attached to a 3-mana 3/3 that just draws cards whenever any of your rogues deal combat damage to a player is nice. That's not 1 or more creatures. Any rogue dealing combat damage will draw you a card. You can potentially draw 2 cards just when this enters off the curve of your 1-drop and 2-drop. That's just really solid, and the menace is a nice bonus as well. I think Overprepared Accomplice is a really solid card. Petty Larceny is 2 a blue and a red for a sorcery. It has Spectacle for blue and a red. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card. When you start a non-land card this way, Petty Larceny deals 4 damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. That 4 damage is really good for 2 mana when it comes attached to drawing a card. I think this actually might be one of the strongest cards in the set. If you can consistently enable Spectacle, this is going to be a 4 damage removal spell that draws a card with selection. That is really freaking good. Profane Gathering is 2 a white and a black for an instant. Create 3 Acolyte tokens, and until end of turn, creature tokens you control get +1/+0. Unfortunately, I don't think this is any good. Creating 3 sack fodders for 4 mana is a bit too expensive, and the +1/+1 the +1/+0 Anthem, there you go, is only until end of turn, and only affecting your creature tokens. I just don't think this quite gets there for 4 mana. Profane Scripture is 2 a white and a black for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice any number of creatures. Search your library for a card with mana value less than or equal to 1 plus the number of creatures sacrificed to cast a spell, exile it, then shuffle. You may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. Unfortunately, I don't think this card is any good. It's similar to Natural Order in that you sacrifice a creature to go get something good, but you're constrained by the amount of stuff you have on board. Even in the best case scenarios where you play a token maker each turn and you have 6 tokens, Profane Scripture can get you a 7-drop for 4 mana. And that is nice, but we've seen cards that can do that are better, that are in this set. I just don't think Profane Scripture is any good. Rally the Rabble is 2 a red and a white for an enchantment. When it enters, it deals damage equal to the number of rebels you control to any target. Non-token creatures you control get +1/+1. I actually really like this for a Rebels deck. Having an Anthem that also just smacks something for like 3 or 4 damage is pretty solid. Send it upstairs or kill your opponent's thing. Either one is a pretty solid use case, and getting that Anthem is nice. Only hitting non-token creatures is a downside, but the Rebels deck hasn't had too many creature tokens so far. Rowdy Mob is 2 a green and a white for a sorcery. You create 2 1/1 white citizen creature tokens, then create 2 weapon tokens and attach 1 to each of those creatures. And I do want to make sure you have an S on that tokens there. I think this is just not good. 4 mana to make 4 bodies is nice. That is probably the best use case of the card if you can take advantage of all 4 bodies, but making 4 mana for 2 2/2s has never been the rate you want. Ruthless Stalker is 1 a black and a green for a 2/2 creature rat mercenary. It has Death Touch. When it enters, you destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent with mana value 1 or less, and when it dies, return up to 1 target permanent card with mana value 1 or less from your graveyard to your hand. This is an interesting card to evaluate. Obviously, it can kill a small thing your opponent has, or a token, which is nice, and getting back a land card or a really cheap 1 mana spell with this is good. What comes to mind is that black enchantment that costs 1 mana. That feels pretty solid to get back with this. But I don't know. For 3 mana, I feel like I want a little bit more oomph out of my creature. Sanctum Deathspeaker is white and a black for a 1/1 creature, Snake Warlock. Other warlocks you control get +1/+1. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice another creature you control. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. I think you're just happy running this as a 2-mana 1/1 Anthem that affects all your other guys. Obviously, if you can grow this with something free, that's like you're happy to sack, that's nice. But I think you actually want to have your Acolyte tokens usually stick around with this, because them being 1/2s is a lot nicer than this getting a +1/+1 counter. I don't think it's a bad card, though. Like, just being an Anthem on a 2-mana creature has historically been pretty decent. Shroud Warder Phoenix is 2 a red and a green for a 3/2 creature Phoenix. It has flying, trample, and haste, and at the beginning of your end step, you may exile another card with mana value 4 or greater from your graveyard. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand. This is just a really solid card for like a looters deck. If you are running looters or mill and you have a way to like consistently discard this for value, you're really happy. It's also just a sticky threat in the late game. Playing this repeatedly is really nice, and if your opponent can't deal with it permanently by killing it without it going to the graveyard, it's just going to keep coming back. If you have a lot of other cards, like in a, I don't know, big red deck, this is just going to be so hard to get rid of, because you're going to be able to just dig through that deck, get stuff in your graveyard, and bring this back every time. Silent Warden is 2 a white and a blue for a 3/3 creature angel. As flying, your opponents can't cast more than 1 spell each turn, and the second spell you cast each turn costs 1 less to cast and can't be countered. This is just a solid little hate piece. 4 mana 3/3 that locks your opponents down to 1 spell a turn is not a bad rate, and that reduction on the spell and the can't be countered could be potent. 4 mana is a lot to ask for something that doesn't really kill opponents that fast, but I could see a world where it sees play for all that powerful text. Siern's Betrayal is 1 a black and a red for a sorcery. Choose up to 2 target creature cards with mana value 3 or less in your graveyard. Return 1 to the battlefield and the other to your hand. This is not a bad effect. 3 mana to return a creature to the battlefield is not great, but the fact that you draw a card on top of it is pretty solid. I could see a world where it sees play with that 1 mana card that makes a 5/5 and it's reanimated, and you just get another good card from your graveyard to your hand. That's not bad. Smolder Away is 1 a black and a red for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may exile 2 cards from your graveyard. If you do, you draw a card and lose 2 life. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile 2 cards from your graveyard. If you do, this enchantment deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. I think you're definitely mainly interested in the first mode here. Being able to turn this into a Phyrexian Arena seems pretty nice. The fact that you can negate the life loss if you have a truly stocked graveyard and burn the opponent a little bit in the meantime seems nice, but Phyrexian Arena does not exactly reach constructed play anymore, and I don't think this is going to be, this is probably going to be in the same boat as Arena and not quite making it. Soul Cage is 2 a white and a blue for a sorcery. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, then cast a copy of that creature without paying its mana cost. It's a 4 mana clone that lets you get cast triggers. 4 mana clones usually don't see play, and I don't think adding cast triggers in is going to make this see play as well. Starry-Eyed Scholar is 1 a white and a blue for a 1/4 creature cat wizard. It has ward 1, and whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you gain 1 life and draw a card. Just a decent effect. Drawing a card whenever you cast your second spell is nice. Having ward 1 is nice for your draw engine to have. I mean, I could see a world where this sees play in like a second spell deck. Sorolla, Vile Preacher, is 1 a white and a black for a 1/3 legendary creature, Rat Warlock. You can pay white and a black, sacrifice another creature to put a +1/+1 counter on Sorolla and draw a card. And at the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. If 3 or more creatures you control die this turn, instead each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. This is a solid little Aristocrats piece. Being able to put +1/+1 counters on it and drawing a card at instant speed for 2 mana, and all you have to do is sacrifice another creature, not a bad rate. And being able to burn the opponent for 3 is something you're going to be very happy to do. As a total package, I don't know if Sorolla quite gets there. 3 mana to not do anything except ping the opponent for 1 is rough, and needing additional mana to do more is going to be a tough sell. But if you can manage to consistently just get value out of all of her different abilities here, I think you'll be pretty happy. Tale of Bedlam is 5 a red and a green for sorcery. Create a 5/5 red skeleton dragon creature token with flying. You may have it fight target creature you don't control. Then you can pay 1 a red and a green to discard this card and create a treasure token. If you don't, draw a card. This is an interesting card to evaluate. Obviously, you're going to be wanting to use this discard mode pretty often to just to make a treasure token or cycle. That is pretty nice, and it can be done at instant speed, which is good. I think the mode here is probably okay. Making a 5/5 of flying that fights something is pretty good for 7 mana when it has this like 2 mana mode on top. I do believe this wording means you have to have a target to play it, which is a little rough. I would like to be able to play this on an empty board, but having it be a May means you do have to target something and then choose not to fight it if you want, but it is going to require that target, which is a little rough. But again, 2 mana mode, pretty solid with the modality, and I think that is going to be what sells the card, having this 2 mana mode and then the 7 mana mode in the late game. Torvel, Scion of Rot, is 4 black and a green for a 7/7 legendary creature, Treefolk Mercenary. Mercenary Treefolk, that is fun. It has Menace, Death Touch, and Ward 2. It can't be blocked by creatures of power 2 or less. It has Pursuit, 2 black-green, discard a card, pay 3 life. This is a pretty nice beater for your Pursuit deck. The 6 mana 7/7 mode is decent. Menace, Death Touch, Ward 2, and Can't Be Chumped is pretty good for a 6-drop, and the Pursuit mode is really where you want to be. If you're playing this for 4 mana, discarding a card and paying 3 life isn't too bad of a cost, especially if you're discarding another Pursuit card into your graveyard. 4 mana 7/7 with all those abilities is going to be pretty solid as well. I could see Torvel being pretty good. Turin Untouchable is a blue and a red for a 3/2 legendary creature as per rogue. It has haste. When Turin enters, tap target creature you don't control and put a stun counter on it. Whenever Turin becomes a target of a spell or ability, you may pay 1. If you do, return it to its owner's hand. Turin seems to be a solid little engine here, where you can go ahead and tap down your opponent's stuff, swing in for 3, and then go ahead and return Turin back to your hand to do it all over again the next turn. If you can consistently have Turin coming back to your hand, you're pretty happy. It does have sort of pseudo hexproof where it works off your opponent's stuff too, so as long as you can hold up 1 mana, they're going to find it hard to deal with single target removal. So, Turin, pretty solid card. Umber Growth Tender is 1 green and a blue for a 2/3 creature Snake Druid. It has tap, surveil 1, and you gain 1 life. And other druids you control have tap, surveil 1, and you gain 1 life. I think this is a limited card. If you're running a bunch of druids, you do not want to be tapping them just to surveil 1 and gain 1 life. There are better things you can be doing for 3 mana. Valiant Firebrand. 1 a red and a white for a 4/3 creature human rebel. It has hexproof for mana value 2 or less, and whenever it is dealt damage, you exile that many cards from the top of your library. You gain that much life, and you may play one of those cards until the end of your next turn. This is just a really solid beater. 3 mana 4/3 that just punches the opponent is good. Having hexproof for mana value 2 or less means a lot of typical removal. This is just going to dodge it. And the fact that if you try to hit it in combat, you draw a card, sort of, is really good. Like, this card just does everything, and with good stats on top. Very solid. Voice of the Old Grove. Green and a blue for a 1/3 creature Azra Druid. It has Vigilance, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, untap target land you control. Then if you're Ancient, you may have it become a 4/4 elemental creature with Vigilance, Haste, and indestructible until end of turn. It's still a land. This is an interesting card to think about. It's sort of a 2 mana dork. It has Vigilance, which means it can attack itself, and when it becomes Ancient, it starts making 4/4 beaters each turn. Again, that 4/4 beater goes away at the end of the turn, but still, that's a pretty solid rate. You do need to run instant speed spells if you want to take advantage of the ramp to cast a single spell, but again, you can also just use this to double spell pretty well. It's an interesting card, and I think it has a lot of potential. Volwood Defilers is 2 blue and a black for a star 4 creature dog horror. It has Menace and Ward 1. This creature's power is equal to the number of cards put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn. Whenever it attacks, mill 3 cards. The fact that it's always a baseline 4 mana 3/4 with Menace and Ward 1 is pretty solid, and the fact that it just grows if you have any other way to enable it is pretty enticing. 4 mana is a lot, unfortunately, so I do think this is probably not going to make it, but it is worth considering. Volwood Stalwart is 2 red and white for a 3/4 creature Treefolk Rebel. It has Lifelink and Muster. Whenever you cast a creature spell, this creature deals 1 damage to any target. I think this is probably just a little too expensive to be good. Being able to kill your opponent's small things is nice, but for 4 mana, I want a little more oomph. Wanton Destruction is 3 a black and a green for sorcery. Each player sacrifices all non-land permanents they control. Yeah, that's a solid little 5-mana spell. Just being able to clear the board of literally everything is where you want to be. And this can deal with banishing lights, it can deal with creatures, it can deal with planeswalkers. Like, this is everything you want in a board wipe. You want to make sure you are not playing to board too much for this to be online, but if you're just running a bunch of fodder you don't mind sacrificing, Wanton Destruction is perfect. Wharf Forge Master is 2 a green and white for a 2/2 creature, Human Artificer. It has Vigilance. When it enters, you create 2 weapon tokens. You may attach each to a creature you control, and the first spell you cast on each of your turns has affinity for tokens. Now, this is a good reason for that Celestia spell from earlier that makes 4 tokens. Obviously, again, this is going to be similar in that it only cares about the first spell you cast. So if this is the first spell you cast, you're not going to be getting the reduction until your next turn. But this comes down as a 4-mana 4/4 potentially. So you're not too sad about that because that's pretty resistant to removal. And then if it survives even 1 turn, that is a lot of mana cheat in the average token deck. This card seems pretty solid. Wharf Vendor is 1 a green and a white for a 2/3 creature, Cat Citizen. Whenever a creature you token you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Whenever a non-creature token you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Yet another great payoff to that 4-mana make 4 token spell. Go ahead and make 2 2/2s and a 4/5 off this. Like, that is just solid. Now, I don't know if it's any good because, again, it only cares about the creature tokens that come after it, and a lot of times the creature tokens you play before it are going to be the ones you care about more. So I don't know if Wharf Vendor quite gets there, but it is worth considering. And now we're going into our hybrid cards. Eritol, Grand Adjudicator, is 1 white, hybrid Orzhov, and black for a 3/3 legendary creature, Bird Warlock. It has flying, death touch, and lifelink. Whenever Eritol attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, exile another target permanent card from your graveyard with mana value 3 or less, then create a token that's a copy of it. If it's a Warlock, create 2 tokens that are copies of it instead. Just a solid little guy, 4 mana 3/3, flying, death touch, and lifelink is not a bad stat line. And then having that attack trigger potentially bring back 2 of the same Warlock is really potent. I would really want something that has a powerful ETB off this, but just being able to get any permanent card is nice too. This can grab lands, this can grab banishing lights, this can grab just any creature. Like, it's not a bad rate. Having to sacrifice something is a little bit of a hoop, but you have all these Acolyte tokens sticking around. Blinded Arbiter is 2 white-blue for a 2/2 creature, Angel with flying. Whenever it attacks, target attacking creature without flying gains flying until end of turn. This is a limited card. Concord Alchemist is 1 hybrid green-blue for a creature, Snake Druid. It's a 2/2. It has Vigilance. When it enters, you surveil 2. This is another limited card. Encroaching Voidborn is 1 hybrid black-red for a 1/3 creature horror. It has Menace, and for 1 hybrid black-red, you may exile 2 cards from your graveyard to give this creature +2/+0 until end of turn, and only during your turn, and only once each turn. This is another limited card. Airy Layfused is 1 green, hybrid green-blue, and blue for a 2/2 legendary creature, Snake Druid. It has Vigilance. Whenever a land you control enters, you have to put a +1/+1 counter on Airy. And whenever Airy or another Druid you control enters, you reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land card. Put that card on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. This ability triggers only once each turn. Just a solid card. Entering as a 4-mana 3/3 is a pretty good rate, and the fact that it just puts lands from your library into play every time you play a Druid is nice. Again, it's only once each turn, so you do have to be aware of that and try to space out your Druids so you can get them once a turn. But if you do, you're going to get some pretty potent landfall triggers. Fledgling Sycophant is a white-black for a 1/1 creature, Bird Warlock. It has flying. You can pay 1 and sacrifice it to surveil 1, and you can pay 2 white and a black to exile it from your graveyard and draw a card. I actually think this card is pretty decent. We've seen cards like this see constructed play before in the Fairies deck from Wilds of Eldraine, and this does a very similar thing for the Warlocks deck by just being fodder that you can sack and then later exile to draw a card. Pretty solid. Incursion Vanguard is 1 red and white for a 1/1 creature, Bird Rebel. It has Muster. Whenever you cast a creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. That's really not that bad of a rate. We have slightly better versions of this card in Standard Constructed right now that don't see much play, but Revolution is a little bit weaker than Standard, so I could see a card that's a little weaker than those seeing play. And it is a Rebel for typo synergies. Killer for Hire is 2 black-green for a 3/4 creature, Snake Mercenary. It has Death Touch, and when it enters, you create a treasure token. This is a limited card. Kindly Tavern Keep is 2 green-white for a 2/2 creature human citizen. When it enters, you create a 1/1 white citizen creature token. This is a limited card. Lucrative Larcenist is 2 a blue and a red for a 2/3 creature cat rogue. It has Spectacle for 1 and a blue-red. When this creature enters, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. I think we've seen better Spectacle cards. This is a limited card. Marl Vacuro Head is blue, blue-red, and red for a 3/3 legendary creature human rogue. If a source you control will deal damage to an opponent or permanent opponent controls, if it's non-combat damage or damage from a rogue source, it deals that much damage plus 1 instead. Whenever Marl attacks, another target attacking creature with lesser power can't be blocked this turn. I don't actually think I'm too into Marl for your Spectacle deck. Just modifying only non-combat damage and rogue damage for 1 is a lot to ask for on a 3-mana 3/3, and just making it so another target attacking creature with lesser power can't be blocked is nice, but Marl having to attack to do so, I just don't think the whole package adds up. Orlus of the Elite is 1 a black, green, and a green for a 1/4 legendary creature, Snake Mercenary Noble. And as Death Touch, whenever you sacrifice another non-land permanent during your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. This ability triggers only once each turn. And whenever a creature dealt damage by a mercenary you control dies this turn, create a tap treasure token. Orlus is interesting. 4-mana 1/4 Death Touch is not the greatest stat line, but it's nice with that last ability. Putting a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control whenever you sack something is nice with Pursuit and such, though it won't put a +1/+1 counter on the thing you are pursuing into play. Unfortunately, it is also not going to be triggering multiple times in a turn, like something like Mazarek from Cannon, so that is a little rough. And then having creatures be dealt damage by mercenaries you control is obviously not too difficult, especially with all the fight spells you have available to you. I think this could be a decent commander, but for Constructed, I don't think it has a chance. Sara, Siege Captain, is red, white, and white for a 3/4 legendary creature, Cat Rebel. It has Vigilance and Menace. Whenever you attack, you may cast a creature spell with mana value X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost, where X is the number of attacking rebels you control, and enters tapped and attacking. Yet another card that is good with all your muster stuff. Just being able to free cast whenever you attack is really nice. And again, that is not Sara having to attack. That is whenever anything you control attacks. And you can just get a 1-drop or a 2-drop or even like a 3-drop in from your hand into play. Like, that is just really solid. Shroud Scholar is 2 a blue-black for a 2/2 creature bird wizard. As flying, when it enters, you look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put 1 into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. I love me a good Organ Hoarder. This is going to be better than Organ Hoarder for limited. For Constructed, steer clear. Thoroughfare Busker is 2 red-green for a 3/2 creature human bard. Whenever you attack, add red or green. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana at steps and phases end. This is going to be a limited card, and also our last multicolored card. Moving on, we have Ancient Sentry. 3 mana for a 3/2 artifact creature, Construct Soldier. When it enters, you create a weapon token. Equip abilities to activate cost 1 less to activate. This line down here could absolutely be relevant in a combo deck that wants to trigger something like becoming like Nadu. Let's be honest, it's a Nadu. If you have a 1-mana equip ability, this can go off with Nadu pretty much infinitely. So good to keep an eye on that, but otherwise this is not going to see much play. Autonomous Accomplice is 4 mana for a 3/3 artifact creature construct. It is also a druid, mercenary, rebel, rogue, and warlock. When it enters, you choose 1, create a treasure token, exile target player's graveyard, or put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. This is a limited card. Bounty Wall is 2 mana for an artifact. When it enters or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, create a tap treasure token. The version of this card that draws cards generally tends to be pretty good. I think making a treasure token is probably a little worse in this case for the deck that wants it. I could see a world where generating 2 artifacts is very important, and a 3rd artifact once you sack this. That is a lot of fodder sitting around, which could be nice. Disposable Dagger is 2 mana for an artifact. Equipped creature gets +2/+0. You can pay 6 and sacrifice this equipment to destroy target creature or planeswalker, and it has equip for 2. This is a limited card. Dormant God Killer is 4 mana for an 8/8 artifact creature construct. Enters tapped with 6 stun counters on it. It doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. It has Trample, and whenever 1 or more cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, untap this creature. 4 mana is a lot for this effect. It's 4 mana, and then you have to put in work to actually make it an 8/8. I think that work is probably just not going to pay off. Even if you can turn this online the turn it enters, I think it's just going to be a rough sell. The Founder's Cage is a 2-mana artifact. It is a legendary artifact, actually. Enters tapped with 5 loyalty counters on it. You may tap and remove a loyalty counter from a permanent you control to choose one. Add 1 mana of any color, or put a loyalty counter on target planeswalker. This is a really solid 2-mana ramp card. That's right, 2-mana artifact ramp can be pretty solid, and this adds mana of any color, which is really good. We've seen cards like the Ironcrag not really see play because they tap for colorless, which can be a little rough. This adds mana of any color. And you can also just pump up your planeswalkers to get to those powerful ultimates faster. I think for the flipwalkers in this set, this is probably not going to be as good because we didn't see like any insane loyalty abilities you want to ramp into, but it's not bad. And I'm certain other sets will appreciate that loyalty counter ability. Gathering Place is a 3-mana artifact that says, as this artifact enters, choose a creature type. Spells you cast of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast, and you can pay 1 and sacrifice this artifact to return target card of the chosen type from your graveyard to your hand. I think this is probably just a little too expensive for your average typal deck to want. Heart of Bedlam is a 2-mana artifact. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a blood counter on this artifact. Remove 5 blood counters on this artifact, create a 5/5 red skeleton dragon creature token with flying. Activate only as a sorcery. This is an interesting little card. It's obviously extremely slow, but if you can consistently be making 5/5 skeleton dragons with this, maybe like once a turn or once every 2 turns, I think you're pretty happy with Heart of Bedlam. It reads to me more as a commander card than a constructed card, but the fact that this works with fetches always has to be evaluated, so it's good to keep in mind. Herbalist's Satchel is a 1-mana artifact that says when it enters, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, then shuffle and put that card on top. You can pay 8 and sacrifice this artifact to draw 2 cards. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each land you control and each land card in your graveyard. I think this card is low-key really freaking good. If you can ever make this free, you're going to be really happy. 1 mana to put a basic on top is not worth your time, but 1 mana to put a basic on top and then draw 2 cards, or 1 mana to just draw 2 cards, is a really good rate. It does require you to be ancient, but if you can manage that pretty small hoop, this is really solid. Memorial to the First Shaper is 2 mana for an artifact. Tokens and non-basic lands enter tapped. Players can't create more than 1 token each turn. Just a solid card. Hating out tokens and non-basic lands is going to be a nice effect to hate out token decks and also greedy decks. And players can't create more than 1 token each turn is a solid effect. Obviously, we'd prefer they can't ever create tokens, but for 2 mana, you take what you can get. Prized Possession is a 2-mana artifact equipment. It says equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has flying. It has equip 3. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each time 1 or more sources you control dealt damage to an opponent this turn. This is an interesting card to evaluate. If the equip ability is free, again, Nadu, but in other normal decks, if the equip ability is free, you're really happy to just have this be a +2/+2 and flying equipment that you can pass around your creatures pretty easily. This helps you actually enable the equip ability in future turns by letting creatures get over with flying. And it's also just like a solid buff, even if you can't reduce the equip cost too much. So I think Prized Possession is a pretty solid equipment. Scrounging Censor is 2 mana for a 2/1 artifact creature rat construct. As Menace, when it enters, you may search your library for a basic land card, exile it, then shuffle. You may put that card on top of your library. If you don't, put it into your graveyard. I really like the modality here of being able to put something into your graveyard for Ancient. Unfortunately, I don't think it's statted for Constructed. Smoke Bomb is a 3-mana artifact that says Flash. All creatures have Shroud, and during your upkeep, sacrifice this artifact. When you do, target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. I believe this is a canon reprint from the Assassin's Creed set. It's a neat little hexproof trick that also lets something sneak in after. Just good. Stalker's Cowl is a 3-mana artifact equipment. It says equipped creature has Skulk, and whenever equipped creature attacks and isn't blocked, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. I think this is a bit too expensive for constructed play. Wharf Patrol is a 2-mana artifact creature construct. It is a 2/1. As it enters, you choose a creature type. This creature has protection from the chosen type. This is a very cute design, but I think it's probably just not going to quite get there. 2-mana 2/1 that has protection from like 1 or 2 creatures your opponent has is just not where you want to be. Moving on to the lands, we have Abandoned District. It is a land that enters tapped. When it enters, you surveil 1, and you can tap for black or green. This is like the temples from Canon, except instead of scrying, you surveil. Those temples do occasionally see play, and surveil makes it even better, especially for stuff like Ancient, where you can potentially mill over a land. This cycle is all pretty decent, and I believe there are 10 of them. So we're going to go ahead and skip the rest because they all read the same, and move on to the next non-cycle land of the group. Bustling Marketplace is a land. It taps or colorless. You can pay 2 and tap to create a trap treasure token, and you can pay white, blue, black, red, green, sacrifice this land to draw 3 cards. This kind of just does everything you want. Being able to tap for colorless is, not the best, but it's okay. Paying 2 and tapping to make a treasure token is pretty nice, and sacrificing it to draw 3 cards, provided you can pay the Weaver mana cost, which this card does help you pay, is a pretty decent rate. The card as a whole, if you're in a treasure deck or a tokens deck, I would consider it. Forgotten Foundation is a land. It enters tapped. When it does, you surveil 1, and you can pay tap and sacrifice this land to search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Just a really solid design. When it enters tapped and you lose surveil 1, you're pretty happy to do that with your fetch land, and then you can sack your fetch land to go get a basic. So that's potentially 2 cards you're pointing into your Ancient deck. Or sorry, into your, wow, I don't even know what I just said. Those are 2 lands you're adding to your graveyard for Ancient. There you go, that's what I meant. Just being able to do a little bit of selection on your fetch is really nice. Next we have Humming Furnace. You may have it enter tapped. When you do, create a weapon token, and it taps for colorless. Just a solid effect. We've seen cards like this see play before in Revolution when it's a food token, and I think a weapon token is something you want even more. So, very nice. Secluded Courtyard is a reprint from Canon, but I'll read it anyway. As it enters, you choose a creature type. It taps for colorless, and you can tap to add 1 mana of any color to spend this mana only to cast your creature spell of the chosen type or activate an ability of a creature or creature card of the chosen type. If you're a typal deck, you put this in there. Otherwise, no need. The Shrouded Seas is a legendary land that taps for colorless, and when it's put into your graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. This is a really cute design. If you legend roll it, you get to draw a card off it, which is really fun. And if you're just running generic land sacrifice stuff, this is going to draw you a card. It's just nice. Tomb of the Founder is a land with imprint. When it enters, you may exile a non-land card with 1 more colors from your hand. Tap, add colorless. If a card is exiled with this land, you may add 1 mana of any of the exiled card's colors instead. And tap, return the exiled card to its owner's hand. This is not quite a Ugin's Sanctum, or Ugin's Maze. Whatever the one from Modern Horizons 3 is called, this is not quite it. But being able to add fixing for any of the colors in your hand is pretty nice, and being able to get the card back is a nice bonus as well. Tomb of the Founder, pretty cool. And then our final reviewed card of the set is going to be the Volwood, a land that taps for colorless. It taps for 1 mana of any color, but send this mana only to cast spells from anywhere other than your hand, and pay 3 and tap to mill 3 cards. This can be nice for your pursuit effects. This can be nice from any other cast from graveyard cards you have. Cast from exile is going to be nice. All of it works pretty well with the Volwood, so it is worth considering in those decks. Alrighty, that was my review of Valir, the Banished Isle. Really love this set, one of my favorites, and I thought as a nice little bonus at the end, I can go over what I think of the 5 different creature types we have here. I think Druid is probably going to be the weakest of the 5. It's a really tough sell to have Lands Matter be a good deck. Landfall doesn't occasionally see play, but it's usually for like an aggressive landfall deck. There have been cards that just care about having lands work in other formats, but I haven't seen the really strong druids that would support that archetype like the other ones have. What's next? Mercenary. Let me scroll up to Mercenary really quick. Mercenary, which I believe was the pursuit mechanic, seemed decent. We had some pretty strong pursuit cards that I was impressed by, but I do think it's probably the middle of the pack in terms of the creature types here. Pursuit cards in general are probably, there's some pretty decent ones, but there's also a lot of ones that I'm not quite into. I think Rebels is probably the strongest creature type in the set. There are a lot of good Rebel cards in the set with like the muster mechanic. Like there are a lot. Almost every single Rebel I saw at Rare that had that cared about Rebels was pretty solid. I think Rogue is going to get my second strongest in the set. The Spectacle mechanic looked really solid. There was a lot of push Spectacle cards. The Rebels themselves have some pretty good enablers for pinging down your opponent and enabling Spectacle. I think it was really solid. And then finally, Warlock, I think, is going to be the fourth strongest. Acolyte tokens are cool, but I think there's just not enough ways to sacrifice them that are really compelling. A lot of good sacrifice fodder, not a lot of good sacrifice outlets, I think. All right, that was the review. I hope you all enjoyed it. I am planning one more video to be released before field test actually starts. I don't know if I'll actually manage to finish it in time. It's just a short deck tech of a deck I want to play, and I just want to show it off. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. This was a pleasure. I'm Provocative, and I'm signing off.